Perhaps in every school, there's a pair of friends like these two women. From the outside, they both appear equally young and beautiful. But one is wealthy, with no worries about food or clothing, while the other is poor, destitute, and insecure. Ba Da and Yoon Gang are best friends. Their friendship dates back to their school days and continues to this day. In the blink of an eye, 20 years have passed, and both have grown up. But what hasn't changed is that Yoon Gang remains Ba Da's servant, often running errands for her. Ba Da owns a high-end jewelry and fashion company. Fearing leaks of her designs or theft of her merchandise, she rarely entrusts work to strangers. Therefore, she always asks Yoon Gang for help with deliveries. Unfortunately, Yoon Gang isn't assertive or resilient. Once, while delivering expensive jewelry, she was startled by the owner's pet dog. Upon entering, she dropped the jewelry, and upon leaving, she tripped again. As a result, several pearls that the owner needed repaired scattered on the floor. Ba Da quickly learned of the incident, but didn't scold Yoon Gang. After paying her a small fee, she began repairing the pearls Yoon Gang brought back. However, she discovered 3 were missing. This presented a problem, as there were no replacements for these particular pearls. Ba Da looked up to find Yoon Gang gone, leaving her fee behind. It turned out Yoon Gang had returned to the wealthy woman's house, begging the housekeeper to let her in to search for the missing pearls. Yoon Gang had to bribe the housekeeper to gain entry. As night fell, she entered the house and carefully crawled across the lawn, searching. Soon, she found 2 of the pearls. The last one was near the dog. Yoon Gang was terrified of the dog, but she had no choice but to grit her teeth and retrieve it. Luckily, the dog was sound asleep, allowing her to successfully retrieve the pearl without being bitten. As soon as she had all 3, she rushed to Ba Da's house to deliver them. With the matter resolved, she accepted her fee. As she left, Ba Da asked her husband, Cha Won, to drive Yoon Gang home. On the way, Cha Won noticed a wound on her leg and immediately stopped at a convenience store to buy antiseptic and bandages to treat it. Feeling Cha Won's gentle care, Yoon Gang experienced a mix of emotions. To thank him, she invited him into the convenience store for instant ramen, making sure to buy his favorite flavor. Ba Da's husband was surprised that she remembered his preference. Yoon Gang simply mentioned that they had dined together 9 years prior. As it turned out, Yoon Gang's family was aware of Ba Da's husband. Whenever he was mentioned, Yoon Gang's mother would sigh, calling Ba Da a homewrecker. It was clear that Yoon Gang and Cha Won had a prior acquaintance. Yoon Gang's brother, Di Jun, quickly dispelled their mother's illusions, stating bluntly that a well-educated doctor from a wealthy family would never marry a Cinderella like Yoon Gang. Her brother was an idle taxi driver, and her sister lacked ambition. Yoon Gang's own love life worried her mother immensely. Approaching 40, her boyfriend was unemployed, staying at home, supposedly preparing for the year-end civil service exam. Furthermore, her boyfriend was untrustworthy. He had actually passed the exam this year, but hid it from Yoon Gang, feigning sadness over failing. Seeing his apparent distress, Yoon Gang left him to his sorrows. As soon as she was gone, he immediately called all his friends to celebrate his success with drinks. After visiting her boyfriend, Yoon Gang went to Ba Da's company to run errands, as usual. Suddenly, one of Ba Da's friends burst in, claiming to have juicy gossip. She'd heard that a certain wealthy woman was experiencing marital problems, and the other woman was supposedly the wife's close friend of 19 years. Yoon Gang felt a pang of unease and made an excuse to leave. The friend warned Ba Da to keep an eye on Yoon Gang, but Ba Da remained confident, believing she had nothing to fear from her. Yoon Gang, standing just outside the door, overheard their mocking words. That day, Dr. Go, Ba Da's father-in-law, wanted to hold a memorial service. However, his wife and eldest daughter were unreliable, constantly preoccupied with cosmetic surgery. He had to call his eldest son-in-law for help. The son-in-law didn't dare refuse his father-in-law's request. On his way, he stopped at a gas station where Yoon Gang's younger sister happened to be working. In his haste, he forgot to pay. Yoon Gang's sister chased him down the road before he finally stopped to pay, leaving her with a negative impression of him. That same day, Dr. Go's wife and daughter were at the hospital undergoing procedures. Because Dr. Go was in a hurry, they called Yoon Gang to pick them up. Dr. Go's family was very familiar with Yoon Gang. Knowing her family's financial struggles, they often asked her for help with errands, paying her a small fee. So, Yoon Gang readily agreed to stay and help prepare for the memorial service. Only Dr. Go and his father participated in the ritual. His wife and daughter, their faces bandaged from surgery, didn't appear. Ba Da was busy with work and couldn't help. Afterward, Dr. Go's father expressed his dissatisfaction with the women in his family. In contrast, he treated Yoon Gang warmly, thanking her for her assistance. By chance, Yoon Gang's mother passed by the gas station and saw Yoon Gang's younger sister working in revealing clothing. Yoon Gang's brother, at his wit's end, called Yoon Gang for help. When Yoon Gang returned home, she found her father and brother trying to resolve the situation. Her father urged her to find a more respectable job for her sister. Yoon Gang immediately thought of her eldest brother-in-law. So, she took her sister to meet him. His company wasn't a glamorous office, but a scrap metal processing plant. He listened to Yoon Gang's request, expressing hesitation as the work wasn't suitable for a young woman. Unexpectedly, Yoon Gang asked him to fire his accountant and give the position to her sister. He was forced to agree because they shared a secret. The condition was that Yoon Gang wouldn't reveal it to anyone else. After their discussion, she introduced her sister to him. Yoon Gang's sister suddenly recognized him as the old man from the gas station who had forgotten to pay. She looked at him with open disdain. That evening, Yoon Gang's boyfriend threw a lavish party. He announced his intention to break up with her. He claimed he'd only stayed with her because she willingly supported him financially, acting as his personal ATM. Now that he had a bright future, she was no longer of use to him. However, Ba Da, who happened to be nearby, overheard the congratulations about his passing the civil service exam. She called Yoon Gang, who finally realized she'd been deceived. Yoon Gang wasn't angry. Instead, she rushed to pay for the party. Although her boyfriend intended to break up with her, he hadn't officially started his new job and still relied on her financially. He quickly changed his tune, embracing her and claiming he'd only wanted to surprise her. That night, Yoon Gang and Ba Da shared a similar dream. Ba Da dreamt of her husband kissing Yoon Gang. She woke up with a start, relieved to see her husband beside her. The next day, Ba Da invited Yoon Gang and her boyfriend to her villa. Yoon Gang took her boyfriend shopping, buying him many things, but he remained apathetic throughout, feeling embarrassed to be around such wealth. On the bus, she asked, "When are we getting married?" His reply was harsh. "Stop smiling," he said. "At your age, 40, it just gives you more wrinkles." Though hurt, Yoon Gang was used to such treatment. At the villa, her boyfriend just played video games while she took care of everything. When Ba Da and her husband arrived, Dr. Go, meeting Yoon Gang's boyfriend for the first time, advised him to take good care of her. This remark irritated the boyfriend immensely. Throughout the party, he made rude comments. While the four of them were dancing by the pool, it suddenly started to rain. The two men immediately ran for cover, while the women stayed out, enjoying themselves. They were genuinely happy, reminiscing about the day they became friends, which had also been a rainy day. When Dr. Go stood near the boyfriend, he warned him, "Even if you're feeling disgruntled, don't cross the line and make things awkward for everyone." The boyfriend harbored a deep resentment towards wealthy people. Having been lectured by Dr. Go, he lost control. He returned to the room, intending to pack and leave. Yoon Gang pleaded with him to stay, arguing that he wouldn't be able to find a ride in the heavy rain. He reluctantly agreed. He then launched his counterattack. He pulled out a lie detector toy. He'd noticed Yoon Gang grilling meat with Dr. Go earlier and was suspicious. When it was Yoon Gang's turn, her boyfriend asked, "Is your first love also present here?" Yoon Gang nodded, and the detector confirmed her answer. Both Ba Da and Dr. Go's expressions stiffened. Her boyfriend pressed further, asking, "Besides your current boyfriend, have you ever had feelings for anyone else?" Though reluctant to answer, her hand was forced onto the device. His gaze turned menacing, demanding a response. He was driven by a desire for revenge against Dr. Go. In his anger, he lashed out at Yoon Gang, criticizing her plain clothes, lack of makeup, and subservient behavior towards Ba Da. He boasted about his own status as a soon-to-be civil servant and told her she should be grateful to have him. He berated her for complaining to others about him, claiming it made him look bad. Finally, he returned to his suspicions about her and Dr. Go. Unable to endure his cruel words any longer, Yoon Gang tried to defend herself, but he simply rolled over and fell asleep after his tirade. He shoved her away, causing her to fall to the floor, and told her not to bother him. Tears welled up in her eyes. Seeking solace, she went to the pool, undressed, and jumped into the cold night water, releasing her pent-up emotions. Suddenly, she saw Dr. Go. He had witnessed everything. His situation mirrored Yoon Gang's. He desired intimacy with Ba-da but refused to use contraception, and she had unceremoniously kicked him out of bed. The next day, Yoon-san, Yoon Gang's younger sister, started her new job. Jai Nam-cheol personally picked her up. Because his scrapyard was in a remote location, he wanted to show her the route beforehand. Along the way, Jai Nam-cheol enthusiastically tried to make conversation. However, Yoon-san remained aloof. As the surroundings became increasingly desolate, her dislike became more apparent. She declared she would never work overtime and would go home promptly. She also warned Jai Nam-cheol not to take advantage of his position to bother her. It turned out that after the previous gas station incident, Yoon-sen had misunderstood Jai Nam-cheol's kindness. He hastily explained himself. Perhaps this was a fateful coincidence for the two of them. Elsewhere, the four had left the villa. Yoon Gang and her boyfriend, Taegi, walked down to the main road together. As they parted ways, Ba-da said she was looking forward to their wedding. Taegi's face darkened. Yoon Gang could only manage an awkward nod. After leaving, Yoon Gang told her boyfriend that during the party, she hadn't been attentive to his feelings. She promised to be more considerate in the future. But Taegi acted extremely annoyed. He carried his own bag home and didn't allow her to follow. Taegi continued to endure the relationship, unable to break up just yet. Meanwhile, Yoon Gang remained devoted, following him like a puppy. When Taegi returned home, Yoon Gang had already prepared a delicious meal. The room was decorated with balloons, as she loved them and wanted to celebrate his promotion. Taegi sat down to eat with a cold expression. Yoon Gang brought up the topic of meeting her parents to discuss their marriage. Unexpectedly, he lashed out at her. Taegi angrily said he was under enough pressure at work and didn't want to deal with her at home. He told her that if she had so much free time, she should focus on herself. With that, he stood up and left. Meanwhile, Ba-da was also in a terrible mood. She had to listen to her father-in-law lecture her, urging her to quickly give birth to a son. He didn't want the son of another man inheriting any of his money. Unfortunately, Jai Nam-cheol and his father overheard the entire conversation. They usually got along well with the old man, but now, knowing his wariness towards them, they were undoubtedly resentful. Looking at his vapid wife, obsessed with plastic surgery, Jai Nam-cheol grew even more irritated. He went to the kitchen to find something to eat. But tonight, his father-in-law was also in the kitchen, scaring Jai Nam-cheol into hiding on the floor, afraid to move. This humiliating existence made Jai Nam-cheol feel increasingly oppressed. Before Ba-da could fully process her father-in-law's words, her mother-in-law pulled her aside for a scolding. She criticized Ba-da for not fulfilling her duties as a daughter-in-law since joining the family, accusing her of disrespect. She claimed that if it weren't for Dr. Go's affection for her, she wouldn't have even considered her. Her mother-in-law's harsh words seemed to ignite Ba-da's anger, which she subsequently directed at Dr. Go, leaving him helpless. Compared to Dr. Go's family, Ba-da's mother was a true lady of refinement. Despite her illness, she maintained a beautiful appearance, and every word she spoke exuded elegance. However, years ago, Ba-da's family faced hardship. Her father passed away, her brother was studying abroad in America, and she became solely responsible for the entirety of her father's debt. Ba-da had no choice but to work tirelessly to repay it. That evening, Yoon Gang confided in her sister about her desire to get married. Yoon-san was alarmed. She knew Yoon Gang only wanted to marry to escape their family, but this boyfriend wasn't a good choice. Marrying him would be like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Despite knowing this, Yoon Gang was blinded by love. At home, the sisters had to give their mother a monthly allowance. Their mother only cared about money and never discussed their feelings. When she learned Taegi had passed the civil service exam, her attitude towards Yoon Gang changed. She fantasized about having a respectable civil servant as a son-in-law. However, since passing the exam, T-Gi had become arrogant. Despite being broke, he wanted a car and expensive leather shoes. Even worse, he was taking young, beautiful women out on dates. While he was passionately kissing another woman, Yoon-gang was at home preparing his meal. The messages she sent him were like stones dropped into a silent well. Yoon-san saw through her sister's delusion. She pointed out the truth. Men don't love only one woman. When he accepts her money, the girlfriend's role upgrades to mother. From then on, she becomes nothing more than a cash machine. Despite knowing this, Yoon-san was certain her sister wouldn't break up with him. Another day, Jae Nam-cheol's father didn't see his wife at home. Worried she might be at the company, he called the accountant. He learned that his son-in-law had fired the accountant. He immediately rushed to the scrapyard, but before reaching the office, he saw parts scattered on the ground. He hurriedly picked them up, as in his eyes, they were all money. The father-in-law had no issue with the new employee, Yoon-san, only warning her not to give any money to his wife, calling her a rat who steals money. After that, he reminded Jae Nam-cheol that he had sent the allowance to Th1AFNG's family. At this moment, Yoon-san realized that Jae Nam-cheol's life wasn't easy either. She then noticed they were out of printing paper and asked Jae Nam-cheol for permission to go buy some. Just then, materials from the scrap pile came loose and rolled toward the path where Yoon-san was walking. Wearing headphones, she heard nothing. Jae Nam-cheol frantically rushed forward and pushed her aside. This incident changed her perception of him, even stirring some feelings. He injured his back saving her, but when he got home, his wife was preoccupied with her skincare routine and watching TV. He had to endure the pain and continue working. Unexpectedly, Yoon-sun offered to help him massage the bruise. The usually cold woman was remarkably thoughtful today. That night, Yoon-gang went to her boyfriend's place and discovered he had bought a new car and designer shoes. She wanted to save money for their future, but it seemed he only wanted to indulge himself, with no intention of marriage. However, instead of getting angry, Yoon-gang advised him to be more financially responsible. Her sincerity only increased T-gi's disgust. He was secretly seeing another woman and used this opportunity to suggest they take a break from seeing each other. Facing her boyfriend's coldness, Yoon-gang found herself reminiscing about Dr. Go's gentleness and the dream where he kissed her. Another day, Yoon-gang deliberately dressed up, wearing makeup and heels, to visit Dr. Go. She asked if he was free after work. It turned out Yoon-gang was visiting on behalf of her mother. Unexpectedly, she was met with criticism upon arrival. Ba-da's mother commented on her cheap, market-bought clothes, saying her daughter, Ba-da, would never wear such things. She went on to boast about how her daughter had always exuded an air of elegance and privilege. Just then, Cha-won Dr. Go entered, and Ba-da's mother's demeanor changed instantly. She said, "I'm so sorry to bother you, coming to visit me when you're so busy. Ba-da is so busy with work, you know." She then looked at Yoon-gang with disdain and said, "Don't cling to him like that. People might mistake you two for a couple." She even told Yoon-gang to take the bus home later. Despite Cha-won's attempts to smooth things over, he couldn't change her dislike for Yoon-gang. After they left, they contacted Ba-da and arranged to have dinner together. As soon as Ba-da arrived, she hugged Yoon-gang affectionately, saying, "Only you treat my mother like your own." Seeing Yoon-gang dressed up, Ba-da assumed she had a date, but she had missed it because of her mother. Ba-da only learned from her husband that Yoon-gang had visited his workplace. They went together to see Ba-da's mother, as she had previously wanted a consultation about further plastic surgery. The moment Cha-won's hand touched her face, she recalled the dream she shouldn't have had. Cha-won also felt a flicker of attraction, remembering the scene by the pool that night. Just as they were discussing the surgery, Ba-da called to say her mother had fainted after an argument at the hospital. Yoon-gang also received a call and went to the hospital. Cha-won hid the fact that they had met earlier. Hearing this, Ba-da didn't suspect anything. However, both Cha-won and Yoon-gang felt a little awkward. After dinner, she went to see her boyfriend. One moment T-gi was cheerful and laughing. The next, seeing Yoon-gang, his face fell. Noticing T-gi seemed oblivious to her efforts with makeup, she asked, "How do I look today?" He glanced at her and said, "Ugly as hell." Defeated, Yoon-gang changed the subject. She asked him to take her for a drive in his new car. but Tigi claimed he was tired. She got into the car anyway, wanting to experience it. Despite his rudeness, she wasn't upset and even complimented him on his choice of car, saying it was worth every penny she spent. But just then, she spotted a lipstick tube under the seat. As she picked it up, Tigi snatched it back, saying, "I gave a female colleague a ride home earlier, she must have dropped it." The next day, she prepared a nourishing soup for Tigi, but he texted her saying he had to work overtime. As fate would have it, her sister, while dining with a friend, spotted Tigi with another woman. She immediately rushed home to tell Yoon-gang. Yoon-gang took a deep breath and went to his apartment to catch him in the act. Fortunately, she didn't witness anything. However, as she was leaving, she saw Tigi returning with his colleague. Although surprised, he introduced Yoon-gang as his sister. The unsuspecting woman bowed in greeting. Before leaving, she remarked to Tigi, "Your sister looks scary." This time, Tigi had truly messed up. No matter how he tried to explain himself, Yoon-gang ignored him. Ironically, the more he talked, the more it sounded like she was in the wrong. "Who told you to come here?" he'd asked. Finally, Yoon-gang asked him who the woman was, but he still insisted she was just a colleague. She reminded him that she had always believed his inability to lie was a virtue. Next, she held out her hand, demanding his phone. They had agreed not to invade each other's privacy, but this time, she had to break that rule. Tigi, having no other choice, handed over his phone as a way to intimidate her. After looking through it, she declared their relationship over. He must have been terrified of losing his monthly allowance. To her surprise, he reacted with anger, throwing the phone to the ground. Even without concrete evidence, Yoon-gang could guess the truth. A sharp pain pierced her heart. Yet, Tigi stood there, berating her. Yoon-gang stated that she would pretend she hadn't seen anything that night and walked away without looking back. She walked alone down the street, a solitary figure. Nearing 40, living together like friends, with no marriage in sight, what was the point? Despite everything, her resolve weakened. She bought Tigi the latest phone as an apology. He, however, seemed only interested in the new device, giving her perfunctory responses. His mind seemingly elsewhere, he casually suggested she meet his parents that weekend. Upon returning home, she shared the good news with her family and gave her mother money. "Money for shopping, take it," she said, and her mother beamed. Yoon-gang specifically requested she buy high-quality beef. However, when her mother went to the butcher, she balked at the price, several times higher than regular beef. She thought it foolish to buy such expensive meat, reasoning that once cooked, who could tell the difference? Earlier, Yoon-san had questioned her sister, "Are you really going to marry him? Don't blame anyone later." Soon after, she brought Tigi home. He looked down on their humble house. The front door suddenly fell off its hinges, and as he stepped inside, the floor creaked loudly. During dinner, their father offered to show Tigi Yoon-gang's childhood photos. As he stood up, the table leg broke. The scene felt like divine retribution or a sign to stop the wedding. Yoon-gang, mortified, apologized profusely. Just then, a little girl walked by, and her red balloon floated into the sky. This, perhaps, is why the director titled the film The Red Balloon. Meanwhile, Ba-da wasn't having a good time either. While discussing business with a client, her mother-in-law barged in. Not only was she rude, but she also constantly interrupted and made things difficult. Although the client was clearly uncomfortable, he tried to remain patient. However, her behavior became so outrageous that he eventually left. It turned out she had deliberately sabotaged the meeting. Poor Ba-da lost a potential client. She could only blame her husband for this. To her dismay, he brought his mother home. Seeing her mother-in-law's shoes by the door filled her with anger. To make matters worse, her husband announced that his mother would be staying the night. Despite forcing a smile and greeting her politely, she couldn't avoid being scolded. "Why aren't you home early preparing a proper meal instead of making everyone eat this garbage?" Her mother-in-law glared at her until she retreated to her room. Only then did Ba-da notice something was amiss. Her and her husband's clothes had been separated into different piles, even their underwear. The next morning, the mother-in-law was incredibly surprised to see her son making breakfast. Cha-won explained that his wife worked very late every day. However, his mother believed that cooking was a woman's job and that men shouldn't do such things. She insisted that raising him didn't mean he should stay home and cook. She immediately went into her room, but at that moment, Ba Da was talking to an important client. Ba Da discreetly shushed her mother-in-law and gestured for her to leave. Outside, she told her son that Ba Da's reaction was because of the money they earned, all of which went to Ba Da's mother. Seeing his wife come out, he asked his mother to speak less. He said that every time she talked too much, she got more wrinkles. To defuse the situation, Cha Won urged Ba Da to get ready for her meeting. As they were leaving, Cha Won threw away the trash, but his mother saw him. Realizing her son was living such an ordinary life, she snatched the trash bag to force her daughter-in-law to take it out. However, she dropped the bag, spilling the trash on the floor. When Ba Da went downstairs, she couldn't avoid being scolded. However, with her patience exhausted, Ba Da retorted, saying that it was their life and that everyone throws away trash. Furthermore, she told her mother-in-law not to humiliate her. Her son was also her parents' treasure. The mother-in-law couldn't believe her daughter-in-law dared to talk back to her. Cha Won had already expended a lot of effort trying to appease her. Confronted with his apology, Ba Da couldn't help but burst into tears. While they were hugging, Yoon Gang suddenly walked in. Ba Da asked her to stay and recounted all the hardships she had endured. The more she spoke, the more aggrieved she felt, eventually throwing flowers on the ground and leaving. That evening, the couple went out for drinks. They had endured so much hardship over the years to achieve what they had. But they were unexpectedly subjected to constant pressure from Cha Won's mother. Yoon Gang saw Cha Won trapped in the middle. He waited at home, but when his wife didn't return, he texted Yoon Gang. When he arrived at the bar, Cha Won smelled her out and came. Ba Da stated that she hated him, but Cha Won replied, "Even if you hate me, I still love you." Seeing this, Yoon Gang felt a pang of sadness. After he drove off, leaving her alone on the road, her mother's words echoed in her mind. At 40, all you do is follow your friends around. What have you accomplished without getting married? Meanwhile, Taegi was doubled over in stomach pain after eating beef from Yoon Gang's house. He even fell in the bathroom and broke his arm. He blamed all his misfortunes on Yoon Gang. After receiving a breakup text, Yoon Gang immediately went to find Taegi. His house password had been changed, and calls and texts went unanswered. She waited outside his house all night, but he didn't return. Finding out he was at the hospital, she rushed there. Upon seeing her, Taegi explained that eating the food from her house caused his problems. He oddly added that her family ate the same food without any issues because they were used to it. It wasn't even premium beef, yet he lied. Despite everything, Yoon Gang apologized, not wanting such a small matter to end their relationship. But then Taegi started talking about their family's social standings. Taegi's family wasn't wealthy, but they were comfortably well off. Yoon Gang's family, on the other hand, was clearly struggling. 5 people crammed into a small house with a dilapidated gate. Yoon Gang still didn't have a stable job and had to run errands to make ends meet. He completely disregarded the 4 years she supported him. Without her, how could he have passed the civil service exam? Taegi was determined to break up with her. She immediately ran home and opened the refrigerator, checking the meat from the previous day. She confronted her mother, demanding to know where the money for the supposed premium beef went. Her mother simply replied that food was just for filling the belly and that the money was gone with the tide. Yoon Gang finally snapped. Normally, she would let such things slide, but this was the first time Taegi had visited her home. She couldn't believe that at such a crucial moment, it was her own mother who had sabotaged her. She couldn't stand this family that valued money over everything else. Even after seeing Yoon Gang's distress, her mother didn't seem to understand what she had done wrong. Yoon-san, unaware of the situation, went to the hospital to visit someone and stumbled upon this scene. She waited at the door for her sister to return to tell her what she had witnessed. To Yoon-san, Yoon Gang was intelligent and resourceful, excelling in academics and blessed with good looks. She couldn't understand why her sister clung to that man. She pointed out that Yoon Gang had always followed their parents' arrangements, failing to get into a good university or pass the civil service exam. At 37, if she didn't get married soon, she would end up like their mother warned. Yoon Gang believed she had nothing left to lose and needed to get married quickly. Even if she got divorced later, it would at least prove she had been married. Yoon-san couldn't stand to hear it anymore. Was being a divorced woman some kind of prize? She wanted to shake some sense into her sister. but Yoon Gang was convinced Tigi would come back, leaving Yoon San exasperated and heartbroken, unable to intervene. The next day, Yoon Gang bought groceries and went looking for Tigi, even though he no longer wanted her. 4 years of her youth were invested, and she couldn't let him go. Tigi demanded to know how much money it would take for her to leave him alone. He claimed she had put him through hell for the past 4 years, and that he wasn't even human anymore. He also accused her of having someone else in her heart, which was why she hadn't dared to play along with his lie when he alluded to Cha-won, Ba Da's husband. Yoon Gang couldn't hold back and slapped him. Later, Yoon San, scrolling through Instagram, discovered Tigi had posted a picture of a sonogram. She immediately confronted him. The girl Tigi was currently seeing witnessed the scene and decided she didn't want to be involved with him anymore. The following day, Ba Da woke up to find a check for 1 billion won and an apology note on her nightstand. She reflected on how Cha-won made her breakfast every day and even involved her sister in trying to mend their relationship. This softened her considerably. However, she then took the money to Yoon Gang, along with a pair of rings she had designed as a wedding gift for her and Tigi. After work that evening, Cha-won embraced his wife, and the teachers laughed a lot, guessing she was no longer angry. Hearing that Ba Da had contributed money towards Yoon Gang's ring was quite surprising. It turned out that only treating her best friend well could appease her anger. This very wedding, however, led to Tigi getting slapped. Afterwards, Tigi sought out Ba Da to talk. They had broken up, and he hoped Ba Da could persuade her close friend to stop clinging to him. It was surprising. 2 days prior they were planning their wedding, and now they were splitting up. As he left, Tigi considered telling Ba Da about Yoon Gang and Cha-won, but hesitated, thinking it might be better if she didn't know. When Ba Da called Yoon Gang, she learned that Yoon Gang was preparing for the wedding ceremony. Hearing this, Ba Da wasn't sure if she should mention her encounter with Tigi. She confided in her husband about Yoon Gang's situation, hoping Cha-won could convince Tigi to return. When Cha-won met with Tigi, he felt incredibly uncomfortable. They never liked each other, and now he was being asked to intervene in this matter. The attempt at persuasion failed, and Tigi even made snide remarks, implying something deeper about Cha-won and Yoon Gang having feelings for each other, which Cha-won didn't fully understand. Cha-won told his wife about his unsuccessful meeting with Tigi. Left with no other option, they could only advise Yoon Gang to give up on him. They wanted to throw a party to help her forget her sorrow, but Yoon Gang was withdrawn and wanted to be alone. That same night, Tigi had just been beaten up by Yoon San. Furious, he confronted Yoon Gang, asking if it was necessary to go that far. He assumed she had called Yoon San and Cha-won, but he also thought it was for the best. Now there was no reason to see each other again. Before leaving, Tigi further hurt Yoon Gang, telling her to stop trying to be friends with the couple, as she was nothing more than an errand girl to them. The scene shifts to the supporting characters, Jae Nam-cheol and Yoon Sang. Working together, they were growing closer. After Jae Nam-cheol rescued her the other day, Yoon Sang continuously helped him with small things, like food. To show his gratitude, Jae Nam-cheol took her sightseeing in his camper van. He brought her to a secret spot he frequented. They felt very comfortable together, spending the entire day playing and enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, Ba Da's mother-in-law was still angry about their previous argument. She secretly met with Yoon Gang, hoping to hear something advantageous that she could use to drive a wedge between Ba Da and her husband. She praised Yoon Gang, saying how much better she would be as a daughter-in-law. She kept digging into Ba Da's past. Yoon Gang's silence and hesitant replies made Ba Da's mother-in-law dislike her even more. She concluded that Yoon Gang and Ba Da couldn't be very close, as Ba Da clearly didn't value Yoon Gang. Once again, she attempted to sabotage Ba Da's friendships. Some time later, Yoon Gang's family learned what Tigi had done and went to his workplace, brutally beating him. Witnessing this, Yoon Gang felt overwhelmed. Her being dumped was now public knowledge. After her family was taken away, Tigi remarked that it was fortunate he hadn't married her. Infuriated, Yoon Gang punched him in the face, nearly breaking his nose. She then returned the wedding ring and the money Ba Da had given her. Although advised to throw a party, she was in no mood to celebrate. So, Ba Da took her to a shoe store and offered her a pair. She wanted to refuse, but seeing Ba Da's excessive enthusiasm, She couldn't bring herself to do so and picked out her favorite pair. Afterward, she put on a beautiful floral dress. Ba Da showered her with compliments and then handed her a designer bag, enough to make any guy look twice. Indeed, the saying, "clothes make the man," or in this case, the woman held true. Yoon Gang, after this makeover, couldn't believe how different she looked. Unexpectedly, that evening, Tae-gi asked her to meet him. Yoon Gang wore the entire outfit her friend had bought for her that morning. Sure enough, when he saw her, his eyes lit up, and he even started acting affectionately. As the old saying goes, if someone is unusually nice to you, there's definitely something up. After just a few greetings, Tae-gi revealed his motive. He wanted Yoon Gang to talk to his girlfriend. He claimed that Yoon Gang was clinging to him relentlessly, refusing to let him go because she didn't want him to marry his girlfriend. But his girlfriend was pregnant. As a man, he couldn't allow himself not to acknowledge his child. Hearing this, Yoon Gang finally came to her senses. She shouldn't have held on to any hope when meeting him. His thinking was truly awful. Then, Tae-gi switched from pleading to attacking, becoming unbearable for Yoon Gang. She asked him directly what he had said when he met with Ba Da and her husband. He accused her of being fickle and even mocked her outfit, saying it was definitely borrowed from Ba Da. "What doesn't belong to you will never be yours," he said. She'd be stuck clinging to Ba Da like a puppy for the rest of her life. Yoon Gang told him to figure out how to repay his debt to her, but Tae-gi claimed he owed her nothing. Hadn't she bought him things willingly all this time because she liked him? He brought up the money he spent on the house, the car, and her expenses, then even belittled her age, saying she had no chance of marrying him. This led her to throw a glass of water in his face. Yoon Gang ran frantically, so much so that she didn't even notice when one of her shoes fell off. She hated herself for seeking out such a man. But her gaze became resolute. This time, she was truly determined to leave him behind. The next day, Jae Nam's sister called his father-in-law to thank him for the money he sent for his medical expenses. This inadvertently let him know about Jae Nam taking money from the company. His father-in-law, who valued money above all else, went straight to the office and, without any regard for Jae Nam Cheol's manager, berated him relentlessly. It was unbelievable that a mere 500,000 won could cause such a commotion. Yoon Sang wanted to speak up for Jae Nam Cheol, but he stopped her. After they left, she felt a pang of guilt watching him walk away, like a child who had done something wrong. Jae Nam Cheol went to work to try and control his anger, but his emotional state was so unstable that he ended up injuring himself. Back in his office, still reeling from the earlier confrontation, he looked at the wound on his hand. Yoon Sang rushed in, grabbed her bag, and headed straight for his car. Aware of the stares they were attracting, he drove off. Knowing he was upset, she opened a map and randomly chose a destination. They arrived at a small restaurant by the sea. She understood that what he needed most was to relieve the pressure. This was a moment when men were at their most vulnerable. She ordered a bottle of alcohol and then tenderly treated his wound. Yoon Sang asked him why he gave all his salary to his father-in-law, leaving nothing for himself. As a man, shouldn't he manage his own finances? He worked so hard, yet it didn't seem to get him anywhere. His salary was only slightly higher than a regular employee's. Even capitalists weren't exploited like this. He'd heard his father-in-law talk about leaving him the company, but deep down, he knew it was just a dream. He could only drown his sorrows in the bottle of alcohol. He didn't want to go back to that house. It didn't bring him any happiness. Seeing Jae Nam Cheol so despondent, she invited him for another drink. They ended up at a hotel that night, but only to have a few beers and relax. The next day, Yoon Gang went to work, and Ba Da tried to set her up on a blind date. Seeing her friend's pleading look, she agreed to give it a shot. The man seemed exceptional and was only 4 years younger, so age wasn't a concern. He was also Ba Da's business partner, and his resume looked impressive, so Yoon Gang was open to the idea. Little did she know this introduction would strain their friendship. The man, Cha-won, seemed more enthusiastic than Yoon Gang expected. They started texting and arranged a dinner date. It turned out Cha-won had been actively pushing this match. He seemed genuinely interested in Yoon Gang. Shortly after, Ba Da received a frantic phone call. Yoon Gang, on her way to the date, received a text confession from Cha-won. He had been divorced for years and had twin children. He asked her to consider this carefully before meeting. When Yoon Gang messaged Ba Da asking if she knew about this, Ba Da confirmed it. Yoon Gang was shocked that Ba Da would set her up with such a man. It turned out Ba Da had just learned about it from Cha Won himself, hence the recent phone call. That's how the misunderstanding arose. Ba Da had known him for years and was just as surprised. She worried Yoon Gang would misunderstand her, but her husband assured her that Yoon Gang would likely understand. They imagined the two women talking it out, but Yoon Gang was already on her way, remembering a conversation from 5 years prior. Ba Da was on the phone, talking to a friend. "I want to set you up with someone." "No, not me, a friend of mine." From the wedding. Now she finally understood. All this time, her grandmother had never considered her a good match for any decent man and never bothered to introduce her to anyone. And now, she introduces her to this kind of man. But Yoon Gang's personality was to keep everything bottled up inside. The next morning, she went to the library early to study. She cleared her head, realizing that her finances and destiny could only be in her own hands. Then she received a call from Ba Da, asking her to deliver some documents to a client. After hanging up, she considered calling her father for a ride. After thinking it over, she called Ba Da back, saying her driver wasn't available. Sure enough, Ba Da called back, offering her husband, Cha Won, as a chauffeur. A knowing smile spread across Yoon Gang's face. Everything was going according to plan. Before leaving, she went outside and blew up a red balloon, making a wish. Cha Won arrived to pick her up. He asked why she blew up the balloon and then let it go. She explained that whenever she's sad, she blows up a balloon, filling it with her sadness and a wish. Just as the balloon eventually pops, some dreams don't come true. Perhaps, she mused, the balloon stays inside you and keeps growing. Cha Won noticed the destination was quite far, suggesting they might not return until evening. This was precisely what Yoon Gang had intended. Having secured Jai Nam Cheol's son as her personal driver for the day, she wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. Jai Nam Cheol's son hadn't seen his father return home in days. He lashed out at his grandfather for treating his father like a dog, using him, and then handing over the inheritance to someone else. He turned to his mother, urging her to wake up and see how unfairly his grandparents were treating his father, questioning why she wasn't on his side. Meanwhile, Jai Nam Cheol stood outside the house. He could picture the scene inside, everyone gathered together, with no place for him. Lacking the courage to open the gate, he sought refuge in a bar. He usually slept at the office, but a call from his family forced him to return. His father needed a large sum of money for surgery. He returned home, kneeling before his father-in-law, admitting his faults but requesting that in the future, any reprimands be delivered privately, away from colleagues or children. He also brought up the matter of receiving a regular allowance, independent of anyone else. The mere mention of money enraged his father-in-law, who threw his savings books in Jai Nam Cheol's face. As Jai Nam Cheol started to pick them up, intending to keep them, his naive wife gathered them up and returned them to her father. She pulled her husband outside, demanding to know what he was doing. She argued that the money was safe with her father, and there was no need to take it back. She still clung to the belief that her father was a reliable support. Jai Nam Cheol urged his wife to wake up and see the reality of their situation. Their son won't inherit the estate. Why was he urging his son to quickly have a grandson? Doesn't he understand what this means? It seems his wife finally caught on that night. It sounds a bit fantastical, but it also makes a lot of sense. The next day, she confronted her father-in-law about mistreating Cha Won and wanting to give the inheritance to his younger brother. Unexpectedly, he turned the tables on her, reminding her that he allowed their marriage because Jai Nam had compassion and intelligence, and that their son inherited those traits. He insinuated that men change once they have money. Just a few words were enough to move this woman to tears. Afterward, he called Jai Nam Cheol and gave him all his money. Though surprised, Jai Nam Cheol accepted it, as it was rightfully his. After his uncle left, the older man revealed his true colors, saying he knew what he was doing, and that letting Jai Nam Cheol have a taste of the good life was necessary to accomplish his greater plan. It's unclear what he's plotting. In the end, Jai Nam Cheol regained his money and his rights. It seems this is a new beginning. That evening, while driving a client home, Cha Gal apologized to Yoon Gang on Ba Da's behalf. He explained that the man he introduced her to before was due to Ba Da not doing her research, which led to the embarrassing situation. He also revealed that Yoon Gang's ex-boyfriend had come to give Ba Da a wedding invitation that day. He initially intended for Ba Da to gift Yoon Gang a pair of rings and then reveal he had bought them himself. Coincidentally, a wealthy young lady had ordered those rings and then didn't take them, so he gave them to Yoon Gang. However, Yoon Gang returned them, and they were eventually sold at a lower price. Seeing the subtle change in Yoon Gang's expression, Cha Won realized Ba Da hadn't told her any of this. He covered for Ba Da, suggesting she was probably afraid of a misunderstanding. Although Yoon Gang said nothing, the resentment in her heart deepened. Whether it was the man introduced earlier or the rings, they were both things others had discarded before Ba Da thought of her. Just then, Cha Gol received a call from Ba Da, asking about something. After hanging up, Yoon Gang suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. They stopped at a rest area. In the restroom, Yoon Gang acted as if nothing had happened, even putting on some lipstick. However, the resentment in her eyes was increasingly evident. Cha Gol's words echoed in her mind. The blind date was her fault. The rings were leftovers. Afterward, Yoon Gang held her hands under the cold water for a long time. When they came out, Cha Gol took Yoon Gang's hand, noticing how cold it was. He concluded it was due to indigestion from dinner and then massaged her hand to aid digestion. Truly a magic touch, it seemed to work immediately. Then, he thoughtfully patted Yoon Gang's back. Seeing Cha Won's serious and meticulous demeanor, Yoon Gang unconsciously let out a soft smile. After returning home, Ba Da directly brought up the matter of bringing her mother to live with them. Unexpectedly, her father-in-law wanted her to persuade his wife Ba Da's mother-in-law. Ba Da immediately became furious. Bringing her seriously ill mother home to care for her, why should she need her mother-in-law's approval? She wasn't some pampered young lady incapable of doing anything. The discussion failed. The next day, Ba Da's father brought her mother home anyway. However, because he trusted Yoon Gang, he asked her to quit her restaurant job and cook for her mother. Although Yoon Gang already had a plan, she pretended to be concerned for Ba Da, saying, "If your mother-in-law finds out about this, she'll definitely be furious." Unexpectedly, Ba Da immediately retorted angrily, "I tried to discuss it nicely with my father-in-law, and he said I should waste my time persuading his mother. All men are the same, thinking only their own mothers are worthy of sympathy." Yoon Gang pretended to stroke Ba Da's hair, comforting her and saying, "In times like these, you can't be weak. No one can criticize filial piety. If this also requires the mother-in-law's approval, life is too unfair to women. Besides, you're so capable, a little strength won't hurt. I can't stand it anymore, I have to stand up for myself." A few days later, Yoon Gang heard that Ba Da wouldn't be coming to the company. So, she snuck into Ba Da's office and opened her computer, copying all of the jewelry designs. Suddenly, Ba Da walked in. "Didn't you say you were staying home with your mother today? What are you doing here?" Fortunately, Yoon Gang reacted quickly, lying, "This copyright is expiring, so I specifically came to help you with some paperwork." Hearing this explanation, Ba Da breathed a sigh of relief. "It seems I really can't live without you. I'll finish this month and next month's work, and then I'll help you with all these small things later. I'll go ahead now." Yoon Gang only regained her composure after reaching the door. So, how will she continue to get revenge on her father-in-law? He carelessly pushed Ba Da to the ground. After calming down, he regretted it and quickly apologized, trying to help her up. Ba Da, angered, slapped him, saying it was an accident. She's endured this for 7 years. She doesn't want to put up with it anymore. Her father-in-law constantly misunderstands her. "Let's get a divorce," she said, then turned and left. He was stunned. It turns out that a few days prior, Yoon Gang had taken Cha Won to the mall, saying she wanted to help resolve the conflict between their elders. "Are you buying something for your wife?" a shop assistant asked. Hearing this, Yoon Gang smiled brightly and explained that she was choosing clothes for her mother, but didn't specify whose mother. Yoon Gang specifically told Cha Won to keep it a secret from Ba Da. Of course, he agreed. However, they didn't expect Ba Da to be there that day meeting a client. Her sharp eyes quickly noticed something unusual. But when she went up to the bridge and looked closely, she didn't see anything. That evening, the two went to the beach. Watching Yoon Gang play with the waves, Cha Won couldn't hide his joy. He even thoughtfully put his jacket around her. "Aren't you cold? You don't have to give it to me. I'm fine, really invigorated," he said. However, Yoon Gang returned the jacket. She told him about previous memories of visiting this beach with Cha Won's family. It was her happiest memory. Cha Won struggled to remember, then recalled it was from a summer vacation long ago. Yoon Gang sighed, reminiscing about a carefree time. Passers-by mistook them for newlyweds. They played on the beach together. Perhaps out of guilt, he bought a box of fruit on the way home. But when he saw his mother-in-law, his expression changed. He quickly pulled Ba Da aside to question her. "Didn't we agree to wait a few days to resolve this?" As expected, Ba Da repeated Yoon Gang's words. "What's wrong with bringing my mother home to take care of her? Besides, I'm not using any of your money. I'm capable of supporting my own mother. It's a done deal now." The next day, Yoon Gang arrived at Ba Da's mother's house to cook, as promised. Unexpectedly, Cha Won, wanting to cheer up Ba Da, also brought over some sushi. Because his mother-in-law was napping, the two spoke to each other very quietly. Cha Won sincerely thanked Yoon Gang for choosing his parents' clothes, saying that it was the first time his parents had complimented his fashion sense. As the two were chatting happily, his mother-in-law came out of her room. She accidentally overheard their conversation. "How about this? Why don't you come find me so we can finish what we didn't finish last time?" She immediately rushed out and asked Cha Won, "Why aren't you at work?" He explained that he had just brought over his mother-in-law's favorite sushi. She replied, "Oh, how gracious. You must be so busy, right? Hurry up and go to work." Once her son-in-law had left, she glared at Yoon Gang and asked, "What exactly are you scheming in your heart, talking so intimately with my son-in-law like that?" Yoon Gang explained that she was afraid of speaking too loudly and disturbing her nap. However, the more the mother-in-law heard, the angrier she became, and she told Yoon Gang to leave. After leaving, Yoon Gang immediately called Ba Da to recount everything that had happened. Ba Da didn't understand why her mother was angry at Yoon Gang and could only apologize to her friend. When she returned home, her mother told her everything. Those two were talking so intimately, it's shameless. Ba Da explained that her husband was just thanking her friend, which is why they were talking. No matter what she said, her mother stuck to her opinion. Someone like Yoon Gang is definitely problematic. Even when she came to our house as a child, she never considered herself an outsider. Ba Da thought that her mother was being overly suspicious because she was ill. "Even without Cha Won, I can't do without Yoon Gang." Hearing this, her mother angrily warned, "Be careful. Too much joy can turn into disaster." Ba Da didn't expect this warning to actually happen to her. As soon as she left, there was suddenly a sound of someone entering a door code. Her mother immediately remembered her daughter's warning that she shouldn't open the door if her mother-in-law came. She opened the camera and saw it was indeed her in-law. Frightened, she called her daughter. Meanwhile, Cha Won also received a call from his mother-in-law asking for the house code. Cha Won frantically rushed home. Unexpectedly, upon seeing her son, his mother became even more arrogant, telling him to stand aside because she was sure she could crack the code. Cha Won directly pulled his mother out and put her in a taxi back home. At this time, Ba Da also arrived. She told her husband, "We can't keep hiding this. If mom keeps acting like this, next time my mom might get really sick." She wanted her husband to be clear with his parents and demanded that his mother not barge into their house. Seeing that her husband wasn't saying anything, Ba Da pulled out her phone to call her mother-in-law. Cha Won, wanting to resolve it himself, got into an argument with his wife. While trying to grab the phone, he accidentally pushed Ba Da, causing her to fall. This time, Ba Da was truly angry. She slapped her husband and proposed a divorce. Cha Won, distraught, went to Yoon Gang to confide in her. Upon hearing that Ba Da wanted a divorce, Yoon Gang frowned slightly. He continued to talk about the pressures his wife was under. Yoon Gang's mother said, "If there are differences, most parents are like that. As the child, you just have to endure." Ba Da has always been spoiled since she was little, and has never suffered any frustration, so she has been incredibly patient already. When they got married, the biggest pressure was having to take on her father's debt. That's why she has been delaying having children. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, Yoon Gang revealed a secret that Ba Da wanted to keep hidden. Delaying having children is because of the debt. Yoon Gang quickly tried to correct herself, but it was too late. Afterwards, she continued to take care of Ba Da's mother as usual. She helped her take a comfortable bath, cooked for her, and set a beautiful table, ignoring the insults. Unexpectedly, she continued to use words that felt like they were loaded with gunpowder towards Yoon Gang. First, she praised Yoon Gang's skills, saying she could open a restaurant. However, she then transitioned to talking about Yoon Gang's attire, holding up the bag that her daughter had given her. The whole outfit she was wearing was also bought by Ba Da. She even asked Yoon Gang if she remembered who paid for her school fees when she was little, and said, "You must remember this forever." Her intention was to remind Yoon Gang that her daughter had always treated her well unconditionally. At the same time, she subtly warned Yoon Gang not to imagine that they were equals and not to dream of things that didn't belong to her. Yoon Gang also understood that she wanted her to keep her distance from Cha-won. As she was leaving, she coincidentally ran into Cha-won, who was returning home. He had also overheard the conversation between her and his mother-in-law. Cha-won spoke to Ba Da very seriously, demanding that there be no secrets between them as husband and wife. He wanted Ba Da to tell him about the debt, but she deliberately avoided the topic. Cha-won, angry, could only go into the bathroom and use cold water to calm himself down. The next day, Yoon Gang called to check in. Unexpectedly, Cha-won had forgiven Ba Da. He said that, even though she had deceived him for 7 years, she had also endured a lot of pressure. He thanked Yoon Gang for revealing the truth so that he could understand how hard his wife had worked. Hearing these words, Yoon Gang was very disappointed. She had thought that they would have a huge argument, but she hadn't expected him to love his wife even more. Very quickly, Yoon Gang thought of another tactic. She used the excuse of bringing things to Ba Da. Upon seeing Yoon Gang, Ba Da immediately apologized for what her mother had done and explained that her mother's health was weak, which was why she was acting like that. Yoon Gang didn't respond but asked, "Have you two reconciled already, haven't you?" After receiving confirmation, Yoon Gang began to stir up trouble again. She urged Ba Da not to be weak because taking care of her mother was her duty. After that, Yoon Gang picked up 2 bags of things, using the excuse of cleaning up, and went to Ba Da's mother-in-law's house. The more she looked at Yoon Gang, the more pleased she was, even saying, "If you were my daughter-in-law, how wonderful that would be." After talking for a while, she then turned to scolding Ba Da. At this time, Yoon Gang stepped in to protect her friend, explaining that Ba Da was very busy at work these days. After that, Yoon Gang even deliberately mentioned that Ba Da's mother was currently staying at the in-laws' house. Hearing this news, the mother-in-law became enraged, immediately rushing out to find Ba Da and her mother. Yoon Gang followed behind, even calling Ba Da. "Do you need to call the police? If your mother gets scared, it'll be terrible." Hearing about calling the police, Ba Da hesitated a bit, but still asked Yoon Gang to stop her mother-in-law. She promised to return immediately. Upon arriving, the mother-in-law demanded that Yoon Gang open the door. Although she appeared worried on the outside, she slowly opened the door. Seeing the mother-in-law standing there, Ba Da's mother was frightened, as if she had just done something wrong. She kept apologizing, saying that she was only staying temporarily for a few days and would leave. Just when the mother-in-law was about to explode, Ba Da arrived. Although her mother told her to quickly apologize, Ba Da felt that she hadn't done anything wrong. On the contrary, she said directly, "Mother-in-law, please get out of my house." Oh my god, she dared to talk to me like that. Seeing this attitude, the mother-in-law became even more agitated, wanting to say everything that had been troubling her for years. "On what basis do I have to leave? This is my son's house." Unexpectedly, the mother-in-law sat right down on the sofa, declaring that she wouldn't leave unless the other mother-in-law left. Ba Da said loudly, "I beg you, please go home." "Go home? Call the police. If you have the guts, then go ahead and call them, you shameless, lowly thing." That day's story ended in chaos. Just as his son returned home, he saw his mother being taken away by the police. He immediately stepped forward and asked for the reason. Seeing her son, the mother immediately burst into tears, pouring out her pent-up grievances and accusing her daughter-in-law. Listening to his mother's story, Cha-won felt very conflicted. He went home and questioned his wife. "Why did you have to take it this far? No matter how wrong the elders are, she is still my mother." Seeing the conflict between the husband and wife, Yoon Gang chuckled inwardly. She went to find Cha Won while he was sitting and drinking, expressing that she understood his feelings at this time. Yoon Gang also said that she was frightened when she saw the police in the afternoon. Cha Won never in a million years imagined that the woman sitting next to him was the mastermind behind calling the police. Even more ridiculous, Yoon Gang, adopting Ba Da's perspective, said that this matter also made her very sad, and then advised Cha Won to be more generous. Yoon Gang's advice resonated with Cha Won. The next morning, he sent a sincere apology to his wife, and also texted that he had booked a hotel for her and her mother to relax, with all expenses paid by him. He also committed to staying home to clean everything up. Receiving the message, Ba Da was very happy and showed it to Yoon Gang. However, she was still hesitant. "Is it okay to go on vacation after just having a fight with my mother-in-law?" She had no idea that this was Yoon Gang's idea. Yoon Gang reassured Ba Da that she should go out and relax, and that she would stay home and take care of her daughter. So Ba Da decided to finish the necessary tasks and then leave. Perhaps because of the pressure from her mother-in-law, Yoon Gang was trying harder and harder to prepare for the teacher's exam, to the point of having nosebleeds. This was the 4th time she was taking the teacher's exam. Only a few days later, Ba Da took her mother on vacation. But unexpectedly, as soon as she got off the plane, she ran into an old high school friend. While chatting, Ba Da recounted the things she had been experiencing recently. The man suddenly told her that she should come back to him, and asserted that he had not been with anyone else for many years, because his heart was only for Ba Da. He said, "You've had enough. Have a drink." Could our memories in Italy be so easily forgotten? To this day, Ba Da still didn't know what happened in Italy. After that, the two went for a walk. Ba Da affirmed to him that she had a husband. When she was about to leave, the man pulled her back. But what Ba Da didn't know was that this seemingly chance meeting was actually arranged by Yoon Gang. Yoon Gang had met this man, told him all of Ba Da's schedule and current situation. At this time, Yoon Gang, under the guise of taking care of the child, went to Ba Da's house. She went into the bedroom, touched the things in the room, fantasizing that everything was hers. She calmly soaked in the bathtub as if she were the owner of the house. When Cha Won returned, Yoon Gang opened a bottle of wine and reminisced about the time when they were close. She brought up their intimacy, from watching movies together to sharing instant noodles. She seemed to be thinking of something, bashfully shy, which piqued Cha Won's curiosity. Yoon Gang boldly mentioned the secret love game they used to play, which startled him. Indeed, their behavior back then was very much like a couple in love. She brought up the kiss between them and then covered her face shyly. She also said that Ba Da's mother was not wrong when she said that she was always sticking to Ba Da to take advantage of her. Her clothes and bags were mostly given to her by Ba Da. Yoon Gang expressed that she felt invisible when she was around Ba Da, which made Cha Won start to feel sorry for her. She recounted everything and then burst into sobbing tears. Yoon Gang immediately moved to sit next to her, offering her a shoulder to cry on. He also comforted her, advising her to stay at his place that night. Upon returning to her room, Yoon Gang changed her attitude, putting on a seductive nightgown and spraying alluring perfume on her neck. In her mind now was the image of herself as someone who had suffered injustice. She let her hair down, looked at herself in the mirror, and felt like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. At the same time, she also resolved to reclaim what was rightfully hers that very night. In the middle of the night, Cha Won woke up to get a drink of water, and unexpectedly saw Yoon Gang standing on the balcony, enjoying the breeze. Seeing the beautiful woman, he was afraid that he would lose control, so he quickly turned away and left. Yoon Gang grabbed his arm. The video exposing the man at the wedding had quickly become a trending topic online. Yoon Sen recognized the female lead in the video as her usually gentle older sister. This arrogant side of her sister surprised her greatly, without her realizing that her sister was inherently a calculating person. That day, Yoon Gang's mother accidentally discovered that her husband was having an affair with the owner of the hair salon. She became furious, wanting to tear the woman to shreds. The frightened husband ran away and blamed his daughter. His question, "Why don't you eat?" only made Yoon Gang sigh helplessly. At home, the mother lamented to Yoon Gang about her husband, but she was determined not to divorce. The two daughters were too tired of their mother's complaints. Yoon-san also felt afraid of marriage after seeing her mother's suffering. The two daughters blamed their mother for always making them witness a disharmonious family. Although very angry with their mother, both still went to the bar to meet their father. The father still didn't acknowledge his wrongdoing in the affair. On the contrary, he blamed his daughters for not stopping their mother from embarrassing him. Yoon-san, seeing her father like that, knew that advice was useless. She left the bar and went straight to the hair salon to resolve the issue. The woman at the hair salon, seeing Yoon-gang's face, which seemed easy to bully, threatened to go to the hospital to get checked out and then sue her mother. Yoon-gang stepped in and immediately changed her attitude, threatening to tell all the wives of the men who frequently came in for hair washing everything. She slowly moved closer, forcing her to quietly leave if she didn't want trouble. Yoon-gang, a 28-year-old woman, disregarded everything to love a 50-year-old man. The feeling of embracing him was like embracing the whole world. A few days earlier, Yoon-san had planned to seduce the older man, making him feel like he was experiencing a second youth. Lying in bed, thinking of her, he unconsciously smiled. This unexpected affection made him a bit flustered. When Yoon-san waited for him to get off work, he didn't know how to face her, his face revealing a shyness like someone newly in love. Yoon-san continuously looked for opportunities to approach the older man. Even during lunch, she deliberately picked food for him. Afraid that people would notice, he tried to avoid her, but was then teased by her to the point of spitting out his rice. After that, she texted him to go camping with her, then hid under the table and laughed. Although he had a wife, the older man couldn't help but be excited when he received the message. On the way home, he received another message from Yoon-san, so he turned his car around. Although there was some hesitation in his heart, he couldn't resist his desire. When he stepped into the room, seeing Yoon-san rush into his arms like a little plush toy, all of his previous hesitation disappeared. Feeling the embrace of the young girl, seeing her cute, eyes-closed appearance, he gently kissed her as if to encourage her. They were just like a real couple, laughing and joking in the small apartment. These unusual behaviors made the father-in-law suspicious. On the table, he discovered love plants. A leaf in the camping tire was also identical to the leaf found on Yoon-san's desk. His son-in-law frequently used the excuse of working overtime, which made him even more suspicious. He went to the company alone to check, but couldn't find his son-in-law anywhere. He checked the cameras, but didn't discover anything suspicious either. Later, as Mr. Park was about to leave, the older man emerged from behind the mountain. Seeing his father-in-law, the older man immediately lied, saying that recently the company had been frequently losing documents, so he went behind to check. Although a little suspicious, his father-in-law didn't question him any further. It turned out that on that night, a smart young man was also secretly working overtime, relaying news that Lee Won was making a surprise inspection. Mr. Park returned home, holding the strand of hair he found in his son-in-law's car, pondering their secret. He wondered how much longer they could keep it hidden. This family is truly disgusting. Not only does the older sister want to steal her best friend's husband, but she also arranges for her younger sister to work in that house. The younger sister is also quite formidable. Not long after starting her job, she managed to seduce a married director. Furthermore, Yoon-gang is even planning to arrange for her mother to work as a nanny in Gun's father's house. They really want to suck the blood out of the owner's family like parasites. Due to Yoon-gang's recent busyness, there was no one to cook or clean at Mr. Park's house. Therefore, the whole family decided to hire a nanny. Mr. Park was known to be very stingy and very picky. Just because she cooked the rice a little mushy, the nanny who came for a trial was not hired. That day, Yoon-gang happened to visit their house and met the nanny who had just stepped out. Immediately, she introduced another nanny, who was none other than her own mother. To get her mother successfully hired for this job, Yoon-gang had put in a lot of effort. Before starting, Yoon-gang told her mother, "Don't let them find out that you two are mother and daughter. More importantly, you're going to be our eyes and ears, you need to report everything to me." With her daughter's help and her quick-witted nature, she quickly got the job. However, due to her talkative habit, she unintentionally mentioned that the older man might be having an affair. She even casually used her own husband as an example. This casual remark drew the mother-in-law's attention. She had no idea that her words had exposed her daughter, Yoon-san. Meanwhile, the two of them, oblivious to what was happening, were still happily spending time together. Just one action of the young woman picking up food for him was enough to make the director swoon. This was the feeling of family that he had never experienced before. Tears unconsciously fell down his face. Seeing the director cry, Yoon-sun knew that she had gradually occupied an important place in his heart. A few days earlier, Yoon-san carefully selected a necklace by the roadside. She waved her hand, signaling for the older man to pay for it. At a price of over 9,000 won, he wanted her to choose a more expensive one, but she wanted to save the remaining money for a stroll with him. Later, she became even more excited when she brought Nam Cheol to a karaoke bar. This was quite a new place for him. She wanted him to experience a different life than before, so he could comfortably relax his mind. They took turns standing up to sing, letting loose with the songs they had chosen. On the way back, she boldly confessed her feelings to the director. Nam Cheol had no idea that his recent habit of leaving early and returning late had caught his father-in-law's attention. After repeatedly finding strands of hair in the car and in his son-in-law's room, he decided to secretly follow him himself. After spotting Nam Cheol getting out of the car with a bouquet of fresh flowers, they became even more certain of their suspicions. He asked the driver who was with him to investigate the room his son-in-law was heading to. He also never expected that the person his son-in-law was having an affair with was actually the driver's daughter. Upon exiting the elevator, Nam Cheol was unprepared and easily had his room number seen by the driver. He quickly ran down to report to Mr. Park. Yoon-san had prepared a lavish meal to welcome her beloved, like a virtuous wife welcoming her husband home from work. Her possessive nature arose, urging her to take him. Just a simple act of picking up food for him made the director feel a warmth he had never experienced before. He took her hand, expressing his feelings. Seeing her beloved so moved, she took advantage of the situation, wanting him to dance to a video and wear a tank top. As the two were enjoying their meal, Mr. Park and the driver were already standing at the door. Right after ringing the doorbell, they both hid around the corner. The driver, seeing that the person who opened the door was his daughter, tried to get Mr. Park to postpone the confrontation, using his daughter. He waited until his daughter was far away before feeling completely at ease. Nam Cheol, completely unaware, brushed his teeth while practicing the dance that his lover had requested. At mealtime, he also fidgeted, not knowing that his father-in-law was looking for ways to expose his true nature. The foolish daughter thought that her husband's mood had been very good recently, so she soon gave her savings book to her husband. Hearing this, her father became even angrier, because his daughter had so much blind trust in her husband. After finishing their meal, the father went to talk to his daughter. He was afraid that his daughter wouldn't be able to live if her husband left. The father's strange question made his daughter sleep poorly that night. Waking up in the middle of the night, seeing that her husband was not beside her, she checked her husband's phone. After checking thoroughly, she still found nothing unusual. Yoon-san's name had been changed to that of a classmate. She decided to secretly get into her husband's car and discovered a bag of antidepressants. Recalling the years she had spent with her husband, every time he argued with her parents, she had always ignored him, showing no care. Feeling that her husband had suffered too much, she decided to change. The two went out for dinner together. She carefully wrapped a piece of meat for him and coaxingly invited him to eat. Her change in behavior greatly surprised him. Even more surprising, his wife invited him to a hotel. She also brought up the fact that her father and the housekeeper suspected him of having an affair. The housekeeper would ask Mr. Park to go grocery shopping together every day and would laugh and joke very happily, making his wife intensely jealous. That day, as the housekeeper was leaving for work, she saw Nam Cheol heading to work dressed very sharply. She deliberately reminded him not to be so obvious, and then went to report to Mr. Park. After several days of thinking, he finally decided to call his son-in-law out to talk privately. He suggested that he call the other woman and end their relationship. Facing his father-in-law's threat, he needed time to think, but it was unclear whether he would end the relationship with his wife or his mistress. As for Ba Da, she had sold off her entire jewelry collection because she wanted to celebrate. Tae-gi had invited her out for drinks but didn't want to invite her husband along. Hearing this, Yoon-gang pretended to receive a phone call and left the bar. As soon as she got home, she called her best friend. As expected, Tae-gi answered the phone. Ba Da was too drunk, so she asked him to take good care of her friend. As soon as she hung up, she called her best friend's husband, telling him everything. Having received the location, Yoon Gang sent Cha Won to rush over immediately, and he overheard their conversation. The two men, upon meeting, immediately confronted each other intensely. While shaking hands, Cha Won wanted to display a bit of authority, but Tae-gi just smiled, saying that Ba Da had been under a lot of stress lately and had loosened up a bit. The cancellation of the exhibition also made her despondent, so the act of selling all her jewelry today had made her very happy. The two of them tried to wake her up for a long time, but she showed no signs of regaining consciousness. Tae-gi wanted to carry Ba Da on his back, but Cha Won stopped him. After all, he was the husband who shared a bed with her. As soon as he carried her into the car, Ba Da immediately woke up and blew a kiss to her friend Tae-gi. This scene infuriated her husband. Back at home, her mother-in-law asked her daughter what had happened. He lost his temper, replying that his wife had gone drinking with Tae-gi and that's why she had ended up like this. After speaking, he immediately went to the next room to rest. A while later, Ba Da woke up. Her mother immediately told her that her son-in-law seemed very angry and wanted her to go apologize to him. Ba Da, however, felt that she had done nothing wrong, so she didn't pay attention to her mother's words. Cha Won, angry all night, went to find Yoon Gang, wanting to know about his wife's relationship with that friend. Yoon Gang continued to play the role of the good friend, explaining that they were just normal friends, but he countered by saying that it was Yoon Gang herself who had said that there was no such thing as a pure friendship between a man and a woman. She comforted him, telling him not to overthink the events of last night. However, Cha Won knew that his marriage was facing a huge challenge, but the things that had happened recently made him understand. He completely didn't understand what kind of person his wife was, from reporting his mother to the police, to meeting Tae-gi, to reporting the company's problems to Tae-gi first. He suspected that the money his wife borrowed was also from Tae-gi. In reality, it was money that his wife had borrowed from his mother. Even though Ba Da had told her not to tell, this venomous snake still used the excuse, "I have to say that this is all because of work." Moreover, Ba Da's personality was one of separating public and private matters. After speaking, she left, at which point she dropped her handkerchief. He also heard about his wife and her friend. Ba Da slapped Tae-gi directly in the face, wanting him to stay away from her and not to keep lingering around her. This scene was also witnessed by her husband, who was sitting in his car. It turned out that this afternoon, Yoon Gang had come to the house to take care of Ba Da's mother. After finishing cooking, the mother went into the room and turned on a recording device, then came outside and deliberately provoked a fight, questioning Yoon Gang about why Ba Da went drinking with her friend. She then called Cha Won over. Although Yoon Gang said that it was because she was worried about her best friend, the mother knew very well that this girl wanted to break up her daughter's happiness, and that's why she had done it. Even though Yoon Gang explained that she had no malicious intentions, Ba Da's mother understood very well what this venomous snake wanted. She mocked Yoon Gang for always leeching off her daughter. She admitted that Ba Da had treated her very well, but had also left wounds that could not be erased. Hearing this, she was shocked at the shamelessness of this young woman. She decided that she would tell her daughter about Yoon Gang's true face. Yoon Gang loudly said that having to live under the contempt of the mother and daughter was also a form of hurt. She also admitted that she wanted to see Ba Da and her husband fight, was a specialist at causing anger, but because the phone was recording in her pocket, the mother decided to deal with this venomous snake quickly. Very quickly, the mother-in-law summoned 3 people to the house and demanded Cha Won play the recording he just made. She looked triumphantly at Yoon Gang, who was terrified and unsure what to do. Unfortunately for the mother-in-law, the recording only captured the beginning of their conversation, just her own words. Seeing she couldn't produce concrete proof, Yoon Gang put on a tearful act and ran out. Ba Da felt her mother had gone too far. However, she had an important meeting and had to leave immediately. Cha Won was left to angrily scold his mother-in-law. After work, Cha Won went to find his wife, wanting to get to the bottom of things. But unexpectedly, he witnessed her slap Kai Han across the face. This action created a crack in his image of his wife. Quietly, he sought out Yoon Gang, wanting to know the truth. Seeing his distraught face, Yoon Gang gently placed a comforting hand on him. Despite the turmoil in his own heart, he apologized to Yoon Gang. He felt responsible for her predicament, blaming himself for teaching his mother-in-law how to record conversations. He also assumed his wife felt remorseful. Yoon Gang then suggested that perhaps Ba Da didn't consider her a true friend, as she hadn't called to check on her. She poured out her heart about her humble background, explaining how it led others to perceive her as opportunistic, even going so far as to trample on her self-respect. Seeing Yoon Gang's sadness, he comforted her. Hearing his kind words, she tearfully asked if she, too, was someone deserving of respect. Faced with her question, he responded with actions rather than words, demonstrating his sincerity. Back at home, the husband snatched the iPad from his wife's hands, suddenly unusually enthusiastic. Unexpectedly, she bolted out of the room, first checking quietly on her mother to see if she was asleep, then going to her daughter's room, using the excuse of tucking her in to see if she was still awake. By the time she returned to their room, her husband's enthusiasm had completely dissipated due to her running around. The next day, Ba Da recounted the incident to her friend Yoon Gang. Afterward, she felt a little awkward for constantly sharing such personal matters with her unmarried friend. But Yoon Gang was used to it by now. After all, Ba Da had confided in her from their very first meeting. Ba Da then retrieved a handkerchief and returned it to Yoon Gang. Though Yoon Gang calmly accepted it, she offered an explanation, saying she'd accidentally spilled coffee on it before and had rushed to wipe the table to hide her flustered reaction. The day before, Ba Da had discovered this handkerchief in her husband's pocket, the same handkerchief Yoon Gang had accidentally dropped. Cha Won claimed he'd gotten ice cream on his shirt while taking their daughter out. Ba Da didn't think much of it, suggesting perhaps Yoon Gang had truly said something offensive to her mother. Otherwise, her mother wouldn't have resorted to recording their conversation. Cha Won, however, believed his mother-in-law was mentally unstable, having overheard her making malicious comments about Yoon Gang on several occasions. He also expressed concern about her memory and suggested Ba Da take her for a checkup. Ba Da was unaware that 2 days prior, her husband had received a letter from Yoon Gang confessing her feelings for him, feelings she hadn't dared to reveal for over a decade. Cha Won began to feel sympathy for this kind woman, which further fueled his disapproval of his mother-in-law's behavior. The following day, their daughter mentioned a school event requiring parental participation, but Cha Won was clueless. It turned out the invitation had been sent to Ba Da long ago, but she had been too busy to notice. He became angry with her for prioritizing work. Seeing his frustration, she called Yoon Gang, asking her to attend the event in her place. Yoon Gang took this event very seriously. She went to a shoe store, meticulously selecting and purchasing the most elegant pair. Her ambition, newly ignited, led her to a salon. She was thrilled with her freshly styled hair, feeling like the most beautiful woman in the world. Arriving at the kindergarten, after the children's performance, games were organized. The little girl bonded closely with Yoon Gang. The final game was balloon blowing, Yoon Gang's forte. She triumphed, taking first place. They took joyful photos together during the award ceremony. Yoon Gang showed Ba Da the pictures. Ba Da showered Yoon Gang with gratitude. Her daughter also called, excitedly recounting how much fun she'd had. Ba Da hadn't realized her actions had nearly cost her everything. That evening, Yoon Gang looked down at the man kneeling before her with contempt. He begged his ex-girlfriend for forgiveness, claiming he'd lost everything. Taegi put on a pathetic display, pleading for her to take him back. Yoon Gang's feelings had long since turned to ice. She got into her father's car and left, leaving him furious. It turned out that hours earlier, a drunken Taegi had stumbled into her father's taxi. Her father had then waited for him to arrive at Yoon Gang's place, wanting her to deal with this Nam guy. Yoon Gang was now busy elevating herself, determined to reclaim everything that had been taken from her 10 years ago. She had patiently waited, suppressing her anger, symbolized by a red ball. Now, the red ball seemed to have returned to her. Unwilling to miss this opportunity, she decided to emerge from the shadows and make the first move. She sent a message to Cha Won, suggesting they meet by the beach, under the guise of needing help with a Google search. While Cha Won was trying to sneak away, Yoon Gang had already arranged everything, even inviting Ba Da along, effectively escorting him to a drinking party. Watching the couple's intimacy, Yoon Gang felt a turmoil of emotions. After finishing a drink, a naive Ba Da reminisced about the past and stood up to sing a song. Yoon Gang then revealed that her first love was the son of a family she had tutored. Hearing this, Cha Won choked, realizing she was talking about him. Ba Da innocently scolded Yoon Gang for not telling her sooner. Seeing Yoon Gang's sadness, Ba Da comforted her and then excused herself. Once his wife was gone, Cha Won asked Yoon Gang why she had revealed this. Tears streaming down her face, Yoon Gang ran towards the ocean. Cha Won chased after her, stopping her at the water's edge. Returning, Ba Da couldn't find them and went outside to search. She was bewildered to see them emerging from the sea. Upon seeing Ba Da, Yoon Gang let out a chilling laugh. The next day, Ba Da opened her friend's purse and found a photo of the three of them together. Slightly disturbed, she asked Yoon Gang for an explanation. Yoon Gang explained it was from the kindergarten event. My Byung had insisted on taking a picture together. Despite the innocent explanation, Ba Da felt a pang of jealousy, noting how the picture looked like a family portrait. Yoon Gang awkwardly remarked that the picture spoke for itself. Despite her friend's explanation, Ba Da remained suspicious. At that moment, Cha Won entered, asking his wife to take their daughter out for dinner. Their daughter wanted Yoon Gang to join them, but Ba Da insisted it was a family dinner. She was unaware that Yoon Gang had deliberately left the photo for her to find. That day at the beach, Yoon Gang had rushed into the ocean, and Cha Won had pulled her back to shore. On their way back, she explained it away as being drunk and overwhelmed by recent events. Cha Won, witnessing their commotion, couldn't bring himself to feel happy, understanding the true reason behind Yoon Gang's actions. Back home, Ba Da woke up in the middle of the night, still slightly drunk. Thinking about the first love her friend had described, she began to suspect it was her husband. Cha Won denied it, attributing her suspicions to the lingering effects of alcohol. Ba Da then confided in her mother. Hearing that Yoon Gang had worn her son-in-law's shirt, the mother was furious. She was even angrier at her daughter's indifference towards this homewrecker. She urged Ba Da to distance herself from Yoon Gang, suggesting she hire a different assistant. Ba Da hesitated, unsure if she could find someone as capable as Yoon Gang. Her mother pointed out her over-reliance on Yoon Gang, giving Ba Da pause for thought. Knowing Ba Da's family was out for dinner, Yoon Gang went to their house. She sat on the bedspread in the bedroom, smoothing it out, then took a jacket from the closet, hugging it close. Finally, she grabbed a bottle of lotion, greedily inhaling its scent. Just then, Ba Da's family arrived back in the parking garage. Yoon Gang, startled, knocked the lotion bottle over, spilling it. By the time they entered the apartment, Yoon Gang was gone. Mai Kyung ran to the balcony, calling out for her, and the mother-in-law followed, though neither saw Yoon Gang. Disturbed but also uneasy, Ba Da, still trusting her friend, dismissed her mother's suspicions. However, upon returning to her bedroom, she was met with the strong smell of lotion and the overturned bottle. The spiteful mother-in-law snatched her granddaughter's stuffed bunny, wrinkling her nose in disgust as she sniffed it. She then threw the bunny into the trash bag outside the front door. When Cha Won arrived to pick up his daughter, the little girl began to cry inconsolably. He frantically called his sister, asking her to help find the missing bunny. After searching all day, the sister, unable to find it, asked her mother. The mother-in-law calmly replied that she had thrown the dirty bunny in the trash. When Yoon Gang arrived at Ba Da's apartment, Mai Kyung immediately ran to hug her. Seeing this, the furious mother-in-law called her daughter, demanding she come home and deal with the situation, but received no answer. Ba Da was at a wedding, happily socializing and oblivious to her ringing phone. Yoon Gang, having found an identical bunny, presented it to Cha Won. He gratefully accepted it and rushed inside, leaving Yoon Gang slightly disappointed. The mother-in-law, watching from the car, saw Yoon Gang's disappointment and seemed to understand something. After returning home, Yoon Gang called to check on Mai Byung, learning the little girl was already asleep. Cha Won apologized for his oversight and thanked Yoon Gang, much to her delight. She had even anticipated this and procured several replacement bunnies. When the topic of his wife came up, Cha Won's tone became bitter. It wasn't until 2 a.m. that he heard a knock at the door. Opening it, he found his wife being carried home by Tae-han. Once Ba Da sobered up, he unleashed his pent-up frustrations. He was furious with her for neglecting him and their daughter for her work, pointing out that even their daughter's tutoring was handled entirely by Yoon Gang. He accused her of working to pay off her father's debts rather than for their family. Without waiting for a response, he brought up Tihan, making Ba Da realize Yoon Gang had told him everything. Meanwhile, Yoon Gang received a threatening phone call. Secrets, like needles in pants, eventually come to light. While secretly looking through her younger sister's phone, Yoon Gang discovered she was having an affair with a 50-year-old man. She followed her sister and learned the location of the apartment where they usually met. While confronting her sister, the older man rang the doorbell. Yoon Gang quickly pushed her sister into the bathroom. Unbeknownst to Yoon Gang, her lover's father-in-law had also discovered their secret. Faced with pressure from his father-in-law, Cha Won had been avoiding Yoon Gang, using work as an excuse. Finally, he decided to take Yoon Gang to an expensive dinner and break up with her. Yoon Gang seemed to sense his unspoken intentions. He excused himself to the restroom, overwhelmed. Ultimately, he couldn't bring himself to end their relationship. After dinner, he promised to go to the campsite and perform the dance he had been practicing for her. Yoon Gang was overjoyed to learn he hadn't forgotten their special arrangement. Back at the apartment, Nam Cheol changed into shorts and a tank top, performing a ridiculously awkward dance. Yoon San's delighted hug only intensified his headache, especially the impending confrontation with his father-in-law. After repeated delays, he asked his father-in-law for more time. Pressured by his father-in-law, he called Yoon San, reading from a script provided by his mistress. His altered lines and lack of conviction infuriated his father-in-law. The next day, Yoon San wanted to meet Nam Cheol at the apartment to discuss the previous night's events. However, her father-in-law, worried, personally picked Nam Cheol up from work, determined to prevent them from meeting. Another day passed, and Yoon San skipped work, leaving a note for Nam Cheol, telling him she was waiting for him at the campsite. When he packed his belongings, intending to end the affair, she became furious. They argued fiercely. Despite Yoon San's refusal to break up, Nam Cheol remained terrified of his father-in-law. Fearing she might do something drastic, he agreed to meet her at the apartment. Unbeknownst to them, Yoon Gang read the message. Sitting in the bathroom, she overheard their entire conversation. To her shock, she realized the older man her sister was seeing was the same man she had introduced. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Nam Cheol's wife, who had come to confront Yoon San, slapping her across the face. She couldn't accept her husband having an affair with a woman barely in her 20s. Despite her distress, she began to destroy the apartment. In reality, this was all part of Yoon San's plan. Unwilling to lose Nam Cheol, she had met with his wife privately, confessing her relationship with her husband and asking for a divorce so they could be together. After a sleepless night, Nam Cheol's wife decided to face the truth. She gave her husband 3 million won, forcing him to choose between her and Yoon San. She tearfully recounted how she had poured her heart and soul into their marriage, only to be met with indifference. This time, she demanded his complete and unwavering commitment. Seeing her husband reject the check, she went to the apartment, arriving just as he and Yoon San were there. This was exactly what Yoon San wanted. Ignoring Nam Cheol's attempts to stop her, she allowed his wife inside, wanting a fair fight. Looking at the cozy apartment, the wife became enraged and started to destroy it, but Yoon San stopped her. The brazen mistress declared that she accepted their affair as destiny, claiming they were meant to be together. This earned her another slap. Seeing Yoon San's continued defiance, the wife grabbed her hair, but Nam Cheol intervened, accidentally pushing his wife to the ground. Humiliated and heartbroken, she fled the apartment, hailing a taxi driven by an old acquaintance. The trembling driver turned up the music, and the song triggered a flood of tears. Yoon Gang slapped Nam Cheol, berating him as a dirty old man preying on young women but lacking the courage to take responsibility. It turned out that when Yoon San was being confronted by his wife, he had abandoned her and run after his wife. Yoon San was devastated by Nam Cheol's rejection of her efforts. She clung to her sister, seeking comfort. As they left, they encountered Nam Cheol. Yoon Gang slapped him again and pulled her still hesitant sister away. She was determined to prevent her sister from staying with such a cowardly man. Nam Cheol returned home only to be punched by his father-in-law, sending him sprawling to the ground. His in-laws, on behalf of their daughter, proceeded to both physically and verbally abuse him. Thankfully, Cha Won arrived home, putting a stop to the onslaught. Nam Cheol confided in his brother-in-law, lamenting that his in-laws never treated him like a human being, while Yoon-san, on the other hand, understood him. The next day, Yoon-gang sought out Nam Cheol. Not wanting her sister to get hurt, she resigned from her job on her sister's behalf. She demanded that he take responsibility for her sister and ensure that their family didn't bother Yoon-san. Nam Cheol went to the apartment building and secretly watched Yoon-san, searching for a way out for both of them. He ultimately decided to give Yoon-gang 100 million won and was warned not to answer Yoon-san's calls. Yoon-gang returned home and gave the money to her sister, urging her to end the relationship. She also told her sister about Nam Cheol happily skiing, but Yoon-san refused to believe that this was Nam Cheol's true intention. Angry at her sister's actions, she scolded her and went out to find Nam Cheol. Upon seeing him, she slapped him and threw the check on the ground. Despite being berated, Nam Cheol gently picked up the check and placed it back in Yoon-san's hand. Wanting her to completely sever her feelings for him, he claimed their relationship was just a fling that had gotten out of hand, threw the check back down, and left. His wife, though initially pleased to see them arguing, became furious upon learning about the 100 million won payment and stormed off. She had taken him skiing to mend their relationship, only to have the other woman show up. Overwhelmed with resentment, she repeatedly punched him in the chest, as if to release all her pent-up frustration. Even back home, she couldn't calm down. She recalled running into her first love that morning and how he still cared for her, making her reconsider her current situation. After all, her first love was much better than her husband of so many years. GMA and he had once been deeply in love, but her father had assaulted him and threatened Di-jun to break up with his daughter. While walking, Di-jun saw Mr. Park and was overcome with the urge to kill him. However, a neighbor appeared, saving Mr. Park's life. He was completely unaware of how close he had come to death. At home, Di-jun noticed a phone number on a very old piece of paper and dialed it. It turned out to be the number of his first love. The next day, he opened a photo album and became upset when he couldn't find any pictures of himself. The following day at work, he ran into Tae-gi, Yoon-gang's ex-boyfriend. Tae-gi showed her a video of Yoon-gang causing a scene at his wedding. She couldn't believe her sweet friend was capable of such behavior. At the office, Ba-da found Yoon-gang's dropped necklace and noticed the broken chain. She texted Yoon-gang to meet her at the office. Realizing that her trip had also been orchestrated by Yoon-gang, she began to suspect that Yoon-gang might have been the one who revealed the debt as well. Although Yoon-gang denied it, Ba-da's trust had been eroded. She wondered who Yoon-gang's first love was. Ba-da started putting the pieces together and realized her best friend was trying to get close to her husband, who happened to be Yoon-gang's unrequited first love. Confronted, Yoon-gang dropped the charade, admitting she liked Ba-da's husband and wanted to compete fairly. However, the scene shifts to reveal that this confrontation was all in Ba-da's imagination. Ba-da continued to question Yoon-gang about the necklace, and Yoon-gang played the victim, crying about her best friend's lack of trust. As soon as she left the room, she clutched the necklace, trembling. That evening, Yoon-gang went to see Cha-won, but to her surprise, he confessed his feelings for her first. He had realized over time that he had fallen for her. Their kiss was witnessed by his mother. The fierce mother-in-law stormed into Ba-da's office and berated her. Ba-da's mother, shocked at the sight of her son-in-law kissing Yoon-gang, fainted. When Ba-da rushed to the hospital, her mother briefly regained consciousness, pointed accusingly at the shameless pair behind her daughter, and then fainted again from exhaustion. After settling her mother in, Ba-da questioned why they were both at the hospital. Cha-won fumbled for an explanation, so Yoon-gang smoothly stepped in, saying she had brought dinner and ran into Cha-won downstairs. Just as they were about to greet Ba-da's mother, she collapsed. Unaware of the truth, Ba-da was grateful to Yoon-gang for helping her mother. Back home, Yoon-gang texted Cha-won, instructing him to corroborate her story to Ba-da. Cha-won left the hospital and went to Yoon-gang's place, finding her sitting in her car. Yoon-gang frankly stated that she would stay by his side discreetly, not wanting him to suffer, and was content to support him from the shadows. Seeing Yoon-gang's understanding nature, Cha-won fell deeper into this illicit affair. Before this issue could be resolved, Ba-da received more bad news. Jewelry identical to hers appeared on the market, selling at 1/10 of the price. Customers demanded refunds. Faced with this crisis, Ba Da had no choice but to report it to the police. At the station, she received news that a shipment of counterfeit goods had arrived. Yoon Gang went to deal with the shipment and ran into Cha Won. Seeing his wife with another man helping her, he decided not to intervene. After resolving the issue, Yoon Gang called the counterfeiters and demanded an explanation. She threatened them, but they just laughed, saying they were in the same boat. Just then, Ba Da and Cha Won walked in. He was stunned and reproached his wife for buying so much inventory. Yoon Gang, playing the good friend, explained the situation to Ba Da. Cha Won, instead of comforting his wife during her difficult time, continued to criticize her, causing her to break down in tears. So, Cha Won went to his mother to borrow money. Upon hearing about her daughter-in-law's predicament, she rushed to the company and berated Ba Da, demanding immediate repayment. Despite Ba Da's assurances that she would repay the loan with interest, her mother-in-law was insistent on getting the money back right away. Seeing the heated argument, Yoon Gang pulled her friend's mother-in-law aside. That evening, Yoon Gang went to the riverbank and texted Cha Won, wanting to end their affair. Her motives remained unclear. The next day, Yoon Gang brought food to Ba Da, just as Ba Da received a call informing her that her mother had regained consciousness. Overjoyed, she hugged Yoon Gang, who was terrified of her secret being exposed. Since Ba Da was busy, Yoon Gang went to the hospital alone. After some probing, she felt relieved when she was sure Ba Da's mother didn't remember anything and left. As soon as she stepped out, Ba Da's mother clenched her fist, as if wanting to strangle Yoon Gang. Just then, Ba Da arrived. Yoon Gang reassured her that her mother was fine and remembered everything that happened before. When Ba Da learned that the police had come to investigate and arrest the counterfeiters, Yoon Gang's expression became strained. At her mother's bedside, Ba Da learned that her mother had been feigning sleep because of Yoon Gang. Confused, Ba Da listened as her mother recounted the events of that day, revealing that she had fainted because of what she saw. Had she revealed her awareness of that night, Yoon Gang might have retaliated. Ba Da's mother, sensing the time wasn't right for exposure, advised her daughter to wait until she was stronger before taking action. While checking on his mother, Cha Won learned about Ba Da's loan request and her promise to repay it with interest. Now that his mother had lost everything, he felt uneasy, especially since Yoon Gang had claimed she was the one lending the money. Ba Da went to see her ex-boyfriend, Tae-gi, finally asking him why he'd always warned her about Yoon Gang. Tae-gi, realizing something had happened, advised her to find proof, as Yoon Gang would never admit to anything otherwise. Back home, Ba Da checked her husband's phone, finding nothing unusual. She then checked the dashcam footage and discovered he had gone to see Yoon Gang. She began searching and found the forgotten love letter. She swore she would never forgive such a shameless woman. Nam Cheol had his hands tightly around Yoon Gang's neck, but she simply closed her eyes in despair. Earlier, a heartbroken Yoon Sen had sought him out, looking for a way to forget someone. Despite his advice, she couldn't forget Nam Cheol. She started deleting everything related to him, except for the dancing uncle figure, which held too much sentimental value. Unable to let go, Yoon San went to find Nam Cheol. She cornered him, demanding he stay with her, threatening to reveal everything otherwise. This crossed a line for Nam Cheol, who, no longer gentle, grabbed her throat. He immediately regretted his actions, realizing he didn't want Yoon San to get hurt by falling deeper into this hopeless infatuation. Later, Yoon San went to Nam Cheol's wife, showing her the video of them dancing. Meanwhile, Nam Cheol left some compensation money in Yoon San's father's box. Just as her father arrived, the accountant gave him a box of items. Yoon Gang arrived at that moment, and he gave it to her to hold for her sister. In reality, her parents were behind everything, constantly scheming for financial gain. Her mother gossiped with her husband, oblivious to the fact that their schemes targeted their own daughter. Meanwhile, Jiam furiously slapped Nam Cheol for giving money to another woman and for letting his lover show her their dancing video. Earlier, Jiam had asked her mother to give her husband a raise and promotion, wanting to reconcile. Now, overwhelmed with anger and grief, she told him to get out of her sight. The next day, she confided in Cha Won, who then confronted Nam Cheol. He reproached him for his behavior, especially given how well his family had treated him. He couldn't understand his brother-in-law's lack of remorse, hypocritically lecturing him about treating his sister well while behaving just as badly. GMA, having completely given up on Nam Chiol, sought solace with her first love. They went to their old noodle shop, where she cried about her suffering. His kindness brought her comfort, and they embraced, their youthful love rekindled. Ba Da, unable to tolerate the situation any longer, arranged to meet Yoon Gang. Upon seeing her, she immediately slapped Yoon Gang to the ground, and then, not yet satisfied, slapped her husband as well. Her sharp gaze could have cut through steel. Yoon Gang, understanding why she was being hit, sat down silently. Cha Won arrived shortly after. Ba Da curtly told him to sit next to Yoon Gang. She then confronted them about the love letter she had found, punctuating her words with another slap to her husband. She now understood that Yoon Gang had called her to the beach to flaunt their affair. It wasn't that she hadn't known what was going on, she just hadn't wanted to believe it. The handkerchief incident was the final straw. One claimed coffee had been spilled on it, the other, ice cream. Ba Da recounted how she had shared everything with Yoon Gang, from clothes to food to personal belongings. Looking at the other woman feigning tears, she stood up, slapped her husband again, and told him to manage his mistress better. She declared her intention to sue Yoon Gang and file for divorce. Everyone in the cafe applauded her decisiveness. Yoon Gang tried to defend Cha Won, earning her another slap from Ba Da. Finally, Ba Da called Cha Won's parents. Seeing their son's bruised face, they anxiously inquired about what happened. Ba Da calmly took responsibility for the slaps and briefly explained the situation. Cha Won's father punched his son. Facing this, Ba Da calmly reiterated her decision to leave her husband. Cha Won immediately returned home and knelt, begging his wife, Ba Da, for forgiveness. Though heartbroken, she couldn't forgive him. She had chosen a public place to announce their separation precisely because she feared her own weakness and a potential compromise. She handed him the documents she had prepared. Ba Da's business was also failing, making leaving now, with no money, extremely difficult. Her husband tried to embrace her, to hold on, but it was too late. The stress of the situation led her to take heart medication. Ignoring her husband, she pulled her suitcase and left the house. Cha Won returned to his family home and knelt in apology. His furious father grabbed a cane and began to beat him, but Jai Nam Cheol intervened just in time. In his anger, the father swung his hand, accidentally striking Jai Nam Cheol. The next day, after leaving court, the two took their daughter out to eat. Seeing this, Ba Da couldn't contain her emotions and wept in the restroom. That evening, Yoon Gang met with Ba Da to apologize. Ba Da questioned what she had done wrong to deserve such treatment. Yoon Gang tearfully insisted she hadn't done anything. But Ba Da, unconcerned, stated that the divorce was finalized and they were no longer related, then left. Later, Yoon Gang went to Ba Da's family home to apologize, but was shunned by her in-laws. Leaving, she ran into Ba Da but showed disdain for this immoral person. Wanting nothing more to do with her husband's family, Ba Da decided to sell her company, then her car, and used the money to repay her mother-in-law. Touched by Ba Da's kindness, they pleaded with her not to leave, but Ba Da, having already finalized the divorce and completely lost faith in the family, stood and left without hesitation. Her father-in-law, desperate to keep her, offered generous terms, but nothing could prevent her from leaving. Ba Da picked her mother up from the hospital and used their meager savings to rent a rundown apartment. Her mother, heartbroken to see her daughter suffering, was furious and wanted to confront the people responsible. Ba Da comforted her, assuring her that everything was resolved. Her sister, while searching for Cha Won, told him about Ba Da repaying their mother. Cha Won rushed to Ba Da's company. Finding it empty, a notice posted about its transfer. He learned from the landlord that Ba Da had terminated her lease and hadn't been seen for days. Ba Da had returned to their home and packed her belongings. Yoon Gang, witnessing Ba Da's departure and no longer feeling threatened, entered the house. Seeing only Cha Won's belongings left, she felt a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Leaving, she encountered Cha Won downstairs. He simply walked past her. As Ba Da left the building, a heavy downpour started. Having sold her car, she covered her head with a scarf and hurried to her office. Out of habit, she asked Yoon Gang for a towel. Realizing her mistake, she knelt and wept. Meanwhile, Nam Cheol, hiding in a corner, observed a surprising scene. His wife reuniting with her first love. He didn't blame her, having had an affair himself. He began to reminisce about Yoon Sun and their happy times together. Out of habit, he visited the apartment complex where they used to live. Coincidentally, Yoon-san was also there. After talking for a while, Yoon-san suddenly hugged Jae-nam Cheol. She then pulled away and ran off quickly. Even though he was out of sight, Yoon-san still loudly called his name. Jae-nam Cheol, hidden around the corner, heard her confession and could only cry. He then returned home to comfort his wife, reminiscing about their beautiful memories. Ignoring her husband, she was only thinking about how to sneak out and see her first love. Seeing Dae-jun waiting outside, she excitedly ran to him. As soon as they got in the car, they eagerly embraced, once not being enough. They reminisced about old times with happy faces. However, she wondered why Dae-jun had promised to run away with her, but then disappeared. Dae-jun's memories also flashed back to the incident 20 years prior. A group of people suddenly broke into his house and beat him, even dragging him outside to continue the assault, nearly killing him. The person behind it all was Yoon-san's father. He hadn't wanted to tell her this before. Now, he just wanted to devote himself entirely to her. Ba-da's mother was furious, calling Yoon-san a shameless homewrecker. Despite Yoon-san's repeated pleas for forgiveness, she didn't relent, dragging her to Yoon-san's mother to expose everything. Yoon-san's mother, witnessing this, was furious at her own mother and embraced Yoon-san protectively. That evening, Yoon-san started complaining to Cha-won, trying to justify her mistakes and blaming him. Ultimately, she played the victim, claiming the affair was his fault. The next day, Cha-won still went looking for Ba-da. He finally saw her in front of the bank and followed her to an alley. Unexpectedly, the kindergarten called, saying his daughter had wet herself at school. In his haste, he asked Yoon-san for help, but in the few seconds it took, he lost track of Ba-da. When he returned home, his daughter was already asleep, soothed by Yoon-san. Ba-da was at an old shop, crafting jewelry for customers, covered in grime, a far cry from her wealthy upbringing. The following day, Cha-won went to the alley hoping to see Ba-da again. He spotted her and followed her to her workplace. He waited all day until she finished. Following her, he discovered she was living in a basement apartment. Seeing the hardship of the mother and daughter, he felt heartbroken. The next day, he brought money, wanting her to find a better place, but was met with anger. As he left, he ran into Tae-han carrying a pile of things. After greeting Cha-won, Tae-han carried the items upstairs for Ba-da. He knew Ba-da was divorced and wanted to get close to her, but she rejected him too. Cha-won returned home to find Yoon-san feeding his daughter. He only exchanged greetings before going to his room. She cooked him a bowl of noodles and discovered he had a fever. His sister called, asking if he had found Ba-da. He told her everything. His sister, worried, wanted to see Ba-da, but Cha-won refused. He also didn't want Yoon-san to take care of his daughter. She lingered for a moment before leaving. Meanwhile, Yoon-san, having a new lover recently, was paying a lot of attention to her appearance. She tried on outfit after outfit before choosing a white dress. She met her lover at a motel, enjoying a happy meal together. Two people lie peacefully in bed, embracing. From then on, addresses more youthfully, and they become more intimate. Both are unaware that a man has witnessed their affectionate moments. This man is Dae-jun's ex-wife's abusive former husband. Every day, Dae-jun stands outside his ex-wife's house, talking to her. Whenever he gets a chance, he buys her things and brings them to her. She, in turn, is incredibly warm and prepares tonics for him. Just as Dae-jun feels like his life has reached its peak, he receives a phone call that makes him even happier. His daughter has proactively called him. This fills him with joy. However, when his daughter suggests he reconcile with his ex-wife, he becomes despondent. Not wanting to argue in front of his daughter, he calls his ex-wife outside to talk. He knows she is stubborn and resolute in her decision not to reconcile. He warns her not to neglect their daughter because of another man. At this moment, their daughter walks out, burdened by the weight of her parents' unhappiness and the judgmental stares she endures because of it. Although Dae-jun loves his daughter deeply, he remains firm in his refusal to reconcile and leaves. The housekeeper goes to the market and sees Mr. Park. She tries to follow him, but then she sees him talking to Yoon-san. She reconsiders and realizes that her daughter is the secretary that Mr. Park had mentioned. Returning home, she confronts Yoon-san, accusing her of not protecting her innocence. She wants to go find Mr. Jae-nam Cheol, but Dae-jun stops her. Furious, she continues to scold Yoon-san. Fortunately, Yoon-gang arrives just in time to stop her mother. Learning that her daughter had kept this secret from her, she reprimands them both. Unable to bear it any longer, Yoon-sang speaks up. Her father, standing outside, overhears his daughter's heartfelt words. Her mother's attempt to catch her father with another woman when Yoon-sang was 9 years old has left a lasting scar. Her father is lost in his own world, leading to constant fights between her parents without any understanding of their children's suffering. Enraged, the mother wants to find her husband to unleash her anger. Yoon-gang stands up and berates both parents for neglecting them. The father, standing outside, is moved to tears. Sitting in his car, he remembers the things he has done with Mr. Park. Filled with rage, he blames Jae Nam-cheol for everything and seeks him out. Upon finding him, he immediately throws a punch. Realizing this is Yoon-sang's father, Jae Nam-cheol kneels and apologizes. Meanwhile, Mr. Park approaches Yoon-gang, threatening to expose her shameful actions to her family. Terrified, Yoon-gang lies, claiming her parents are dead to stop him. Mr. Park looks suspicious but only warns her before leaving. As a result, Yoon-gang lives in constant fear. Days later, her mother's anger reaches its boiling point. She goes directly to her son-in-law's house, grabs him by the collar, and unleashes her fury. Not yet satisfied, she drags him to his parents' house to confront them. The two mothers-in-law engage in a heated argument until Mr. Park intervenes. He apologizes on behalf of his son for his father's actions. Ba-ra's mother refuses to accept the apology and reveals everything she saw. Everyone is shocked, but the mother-in-law blames Ba-da for everything. To prevent further commotion, she calls Yoon-gang, telling her to stop her unrealistic dreams. However, her criticism only strengthens Yoon-gang's resolve to stay with Cha-jin. Uncomfortable after being scolded, Mr. Park arranges a meeting with Yoon-gang's father, D-bong. D-bong is curious to see how Mr. Park will handle his son-in-law's situation. When he heard his daughter had been grabbed by the collar, Mr. Park was furious, but thankfully, it was just an example. Mr. Park then recounted the story of his son, Cha-won. Because the girl's parents had passed away, he wanted to ask the driver to convince her to back off. D-bong looked back fearfully. Mr. Park also instinctively turned around, his eyes filled with distress. Yoon-gang greeted Mr. Park and discovered her father sitting next to this other woman. She pretended not to know him and sat down next to Mr. Park. Their similar appearances aroused suspicion, but D-bong dismissed it. He requested a private conversation with Yoon-gang for better effectiveness. Mr. Park, shaken, held his glass of water, having received 2 shocks about his daughters. Overwhelmed, he went outside. Yoon-gang followed her father to the riverbank. He recalled how he had criticized the other woman's parents for not raising their child properly. Realizing he was blaming himself, he burst into tears and collapsed. Yoon-gang stood beside him, shedding silent tears, and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Yoon-gang's mother met with Jae Nam-cheol, received 100 million won in compensation, and returned home, gloating. At home, she counted the zeros on the check and remembered her daughter's words. Just then, her husband returned and told her everything about their daughter. Both now realized the gravity of the situation. She couldn't believe this terrible truth. They talked for a long time and realized it was all their fault as parents. Filled with remorse, they called their daughters home for dinner. Upon returning, the daughters were surprised to find the house filled with balloons. Their parents had prepared a lavish meal. After dinner, the parents confessed their mistakes, using their daughters' situations as examples. They had learned a valuable lesson. The mother, recognizing her own fault, gave the 100 million won to Yoon-gang, encouraging her to open a small shop. Seeing their parents like this, the sisters were deeply moved. The family laughed and enjoyed themselves. Yoon-gang imitated Ba-da's hairstyle, clothing, and even her shoes, then went to a restaurant. She even copied Ba-da's way of ordering drinks, mimicking every word. In the end, however, she was left feeling lonely. Holding the wig in her hand, she realized that imitation is just imitation. Mai-pung told a story about her grandmother hitting Yoon-gang. Cha-won then asked Yoon-gang to meet and apologize to her, but Yoon-gang felt it was no big deal. At that moment, he received a call from the hospital. There was a weekend reception and they wanted him to bring a guest. Yoon-gang acted calm, but inwardly hoped Ba-da wouldn't agree to go. That evening, she went to Chaowon's house with snacks and toys for Mai Poon. She took money from her wallet and left it on the table, an act that humiliated Yoon Gang. The next day, she fantasized about being upper class, learning Ba Da's makeup techniques. However, in the evening, she still cared for Mai Poon like a housekeeper. After cleaning up, she sat in the living room, pouring herself a glass of wine. The chaos in her head hadn't subsided for who knows how long. Finally, Chaowon arrived home. Seeing his attire and the influence of the alcohol, she couldn't hold back. Yoon Gang felt he was just like Ba Da, using money to buy her compliance. Chaowon claimed he was merely expressing gratitude, but she poured out her feelings, demanding he choose between her and Ba Da. She stood up, crying, insisting she had always been there, steadfastly choosing him, while he couldn't make a choice. Feeling hurt, Yoon Gang went to Ba Da's office. Ba Da initially ignored her, but when Yoon Gang insisted she had something to say, they ended up at the same cafe where Ba Da had previously humiliated her. This time, Yoon Gang brazenly accused Ba Da of sharing the blame. Ba Da retorted that her biggest mistake was trusting Yoon Gang. Yoon Gang continued, accusing Ba Da of never valuing her, bringing up past events and claiming she was treated like a paid servant. She detailed how she handled everything, even the smallest tasks, for Ba Da, and how she was never introduced as a friend. She pieced together incidents from their past to berate Ba Da. Yoon Gang admitted that she started wanting Ba Da's life when Ba Da stopped treating her like a true friend. As Ba Da tried to leave, Yoon Gang insisted she wasn't the one who initiated the conflict. Enraged, Ba Da threw water in Yoon Gang's face, disbelieving that her trusted friend could be so manipulative. Despite Ba Da's unwillingness to listen, Yoon Gang continued, confessing her lifelong admiration for Ba Da and everything she possessed. She admitted to wanting to be just like Ba Da, to live her life. Ba Da finally realized the extent of Yoon Gang's distorted perspective, how her desire to emulate her had led to such unethical behavior. As Ba Da left again, Yoon Gang pulled her back, wanting validation from her friend now that everything had exploded. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man, presumably Jai Nam Cheol, was deeply troubled. Rai Ah, after a day of carefree fun, stepped out of a taxi, only to find her husband looking distraught. Her expression immediately changed. Inside, Jai Nam Cheol scolded her for constantly taking taxis, but she angrily threw her purse down, declaring she was just experiencing what he used to do. Another heated argument ensued, culminating in Jai Nam Cheol apologizing for neglecting his family. Rai Ah simply chuckled, saying it was too late. She questioned why he married her without love, wondering if he had only endured it for her family's wealth. Despite being humiliated, Jai Nam Cheol gritted his teeth and endured it. Dai, emboldened, pressed the issue, asking her husband if he was only tolerating her because their divorce involved no assets. Jai Nam Cheol immediately admitted that his poverty was a factor, but more importantly, he didn't want their mistakes to hurt their children. He was even willing to work like a slave to inherit the family fortune and atone for his mistakes. At that moment, Rai Yoon took out her phone and called her first love, inviting him to go horseback riding. Faced with his wife's actions, Jai Nam Cheol angrily left and stayed away for several days. A few days later, he went to the taxi company and found the driver. He revealed he was Rai Yoon's husband and told him not to accept any more rides from his wife. As soon as Jai Nam Cheol left, Rai Yoon called the driver again. Wanting to refuse her, he pretended to have bad reception and hung up. Meanwhile, Yoon Sen secretly looked at her sister's phone and went to find Chaowon. She confronted him about his drunken behavior the previous night and the incessant apology texts that made her sister, Yoon Gang, cry all night. She felt he was irresponsible and wanted him to stay away from her sister. Just as she turned to leave, Chaowon pulled her back, claiming he didn't remember what he did because he was drunk. Yoon San became even angrier, saying that he was the only person who could drag Yoon Gang into the abyss. Just moments before, as Chaowon was going downstairs, he passed Ba Da's mother entering the house. Seeing the messy state of the house, she couldn't help but have some suspicions. She rushed to open Ba Da's room, relieved to find everything normal inside. When Chaowon returned, she was preparing breakfast. Her purpose in coming was to help them reconcile. She expressed her determination to do everything she could to help him get back together with Ba Da. Afterwards, she went to her in-laws' house and apologized for her past outbursts. She begged them to forgive Ba Da's past mistakes. Seeing her sincere attitude, Mr. Park readily agreed. Ba Da's sister-in-law called, but Ba Da was not pleased with the news and firmly refused any reconciliation. Yoon San returned home for lunch and heard her uncle talking about the previous car accident. The other party, knowing he was operating an illegal taxi, was demanding 10 million won in compensation. The family discussed the matter for a long time but couldn't find a solution, suggesting they use Yoon San's compensation money. However, she had already donated it all, leaving the family in a panic. After going to her room, she told her sister that she would be going abroad in 2 days for volunteer work. She also advised Yoon Gang to leave the terrible man. Knowing her sister would find it difficult, she told her to say she didn't have a sister whenever she went out. Mr. Park rushed to the second-hand shop, eager to find out if the project he was interested in had secured funding. He learned that Jai Nam Cheol was out meeting a client, so he called him. Jai Nam Cheol expressed reservations about the project, saying it needed further investigation. Unconcerned, Mr. Park hung up. By the time Jai Nam Cheol returned, Mr. Park had already invested, putting down a 50% deposit. Just as Mr. Park got home, his driver asked to meet with him. Realizing the driver intended to borrow money, Mr. Park got up to leave, forgetting his hat. He ran back to retrieve it, overhearing the driver badmouthing him as a poor, easily manipulated man. Cha Won brought Yoon Gang home, surprising his family. Initially stunned, they quickly warmed up to her. It turned out that after being lectured by Yoon San, Cha Won had taken Yoon Gang out and decided to continue their relationship. Overjoyed, Yoon Gang embraced him. He invited her to his family's home for the weekend. Adding to the good news, Yoon Gang learned she had passed the civil service exam to become a teacher. Excited, she raced home to share the news, and the family celebrated with joyful dancing. The weekend arrived, and a nervous Yoon Gang, clutching a bouquet, accompanied Cha Won to his home. Although his family disliked her intensely, they reluctantly agreed to let her stay, out of respect for Cha Won. He announced Yoon Gang's success in the civil service exam, earning her their admiration and a change in their attitude. As they sat together, the family expressed their approval of the relationship. Outside, Cha Won suggested visiting Yoon Gang's home, causing her face to pale. Her mother had previously worked as a housekeeper for his family. Lying, she claimed her home wasn't presentable and declined the offer. Afterwards, Cha Won took Yoon Gang to an upscale clothing store, where they enjoyed each other's company. To thank him for the clothes, Yoon Gang invited him to a restaurant. Coincidentally, Ba Da and her mother were dining there, too. Adding to the coincidence, the gossipy woman Ba Da had encountered previously was also present. She rushed over to share the news of Ba Da's ex-husband's impending engagement and Yoon Gang's success in the teaching exam. Seeing her mother's outrage, Ba Da pulled her outside, where they ran into Yoon Gang again. Ba Da's mother, furious, tried to attack Yoon Gang, but Ba Da restrained her. Cha Won, having parked his car, walked in to find people pointing and whispering about him. Someone even publicly accused Yoon Gang of being a homewrecker. Hearing this, Cha Won protectively escorted her out. Outside, a tearful Yoon Gang sought comfort, but a hesitant Cha Won remained distant. Yoon San then rushed to the police station with her sister to report the incident, realizing the potential for widespread parental criticism against Yoon Gang. A few days later, while grocery shopping with her mother, Ba Da spotted Yoon Gang's family also shopping. Ba Da sensed something was amiss and sought out her uncle Nam Chu to talk. When she returned to her room, the madam who had previously commissioned the jewelry arrived. Seeing Ba Da's distressed state, she cancelled the contract. Ba Da understood this was her only lifeline. She embraced the madam, not wanting her to leave, but was abruptly pushed away. Dejected, she returned home only to witness a revolting scene involving her mother's outburst. She dragged her mother home. Just as she was preparing for her father's memorial service, she received a call from the police. They had caught the person who stole her artwork. Ba Da rushed to confront the thief, demanding to know why she had done it. The thief laughed, revealing that Yoon Gang had provided her with the designs. Unwilling to believe this, Ba Da pulled out the designs Yoon Gang had given her. They were the drafts she had previously discarded. She also presented the messages she had exchanged with Yoon Gang as proof. Ba Da finally realized everything wasn't coincidental, but a carefully orchestrated plan by Yoon Gang. Her expression turned icy. Back home, Ba Da knelt before her father's altar, vowing to deal with these shameless individuals. The next morning, she visited Cha Won, apologizing for her past behavior, blaming it on her anger. She confessed her mistakes and understood the reasons for his infidelity. She expressed her hope for reconciliation. Cha Won was taken aback by her sincerity. Ba Da didn't linger, but as she turned to leave, her expression hardened. She then arranged to meet Yoon Gang, and they sat in her car to talk. Yoon Gang noticed a small knife and questioned its presence. Ba Da claimed she carried it for peeling apples, but Yoon Gang knew she ate apples without peeling them. She nervously poured coffee for Ba Da, but Ba Da insisted she drink it. Yoon Gang hesitated, fearing it might be drugged. That same evening, Mr. Park visited Yoon Gang's father, offering him 10 million won to assault a man. Terrified, Yoon Gang's father fled. Returning home, he overheard his younger brother pleading for a reduction in compensation fees, prompting him to change his mind. Later, Mr. Park called the uncle, arranging a meeting and instructing him to arrive on time. He attacked the man who arrived, rendering him unconscious, and took a picture. To his horror, he realized he had attacked his own brother. Unexpectedly, as he entered his home, his older brother attacked him. After tending to his wounds, only Yoon Sen noticed something was wrong with the two men. Their rest was short-lived as the uncle's ex-wife arrived. Seeing his condition, she approached to inquire, but was pushed away. He accused her of colluding with Mr. Park 18 years ago, claiming he was assaulted because she told Mr. Park about Yoon Gang's father. Overhearing this, Yoon Gang's father rose and threw her out. The younger brother declared his intention to live with his first love. The older brother panicked, fearing his younger brother would suffer the same fate as before. Seeing his brother's stubbornness, he slapped him across the face. Yoon Gang's father sought her out privately to reveal the truth about Mr. Park hiring someone to assault her brother, who also happened to be her first love. Upon learning this, she immediately confronted her father. At that very moment, Nam Cheol returned home only to be met with his mother's harsh accusations, blaming him for everything. Unable to bear it any longer, Nam Cheol decided to leave the house. He had endured years of suffering for the sake of his children, but now his pent-up emotions finally erupted. Feeling a sense of liberation, Nam Cheol drove home. Standing at his doorstep, he suddenly remembered something that prevented him from knocking. He ended up falling asleep in his car. Early the next morning, his younger sister discovered him there upon returning from work. Meanwhile, Mr. Park received a phone call. Upon arriving at the scene, he discovered that his investment had failed. He was devastated and wept, facing the brink of bankruptcy. Overcome by this, he collapsed unconscious. By this time, Yoon Sen had completed all the procedures to go abroad. She wanted to say goodbye to Nam Cheol, but couldn't reach him. She then called a colleague. Her uncle, engrossed in his work back in the countryside, looked up and saw Yoon Sen approaching. They both ran towards each other. Episode 19 opens with Yoon Gang hearing a news report about sleeping pills being slipped into drinks. Terrified, she hesitated to drink the coffee offered by Ba Da. Seeing her hesitation, Ba Da snatched the coffee and drank it all. The two went to a restaurant. While Yoon Gang was in the restroom, Ba Da poured a white powder into her food. Sitting in the restroom, Yoon Gang suddenly remembered something and rushed out. She arrived just in time to witness this. Sitting back down, she nervously asked Ba Da what it was. Ba Da calmly replied that it was something good for her health. Yoon Gang suspected it was poison. Unexpectedly, Ba Da explained that it was just collagen powder. Yoon Gang sprinkled the white powder onto her own food and ate normally. However, she still felt uneasy, suspecting that Ba Da's invitation for this trip wasn't as simple as it seemed. At the hotel, while Ba Da was showering, she secretly hid a knife in her bag. Unexpectedly, she slipped and fell while going to the restroom. Hearing the noise, Ba Da rushed over and explained that she had spilled some skincare oil on the floor. After Ba Da left, Yoon Gang searched the entire room. First, she checked for cameras, then opened everything and sniffed it cautiously, as if expecting Ba Da to poison her. That evening, they reminisced about old times. Ba Da's demeanor suddenly changed, and she questioned why Yoon Gang was treating her this way. Ba Da confessed that losing Yoon Gang was the most painful thing she had experienced, even worse than being abandoned by her husband. Yoon Gang also expressed regret for the recent events. Being around Ba Da filled her with anxiety and fear. she declared that even if she were to be killed, she would accept it. Hearing this, Ba Da opened her bag, but the knife was gone. Yoon Gang stammered, suggesting that it might have fallen out in the car. Ba Da didn't seem too concerned and invited Yoon Gang to watch the sunrise. However, as Yoon Gang picked up her coat, she recalled a news report about a suspect pushing a victim into the sea. Ba Da, noticing her apprehension, asked, "Are you afraid I'll push you into the ocean?" Yoon Gang broke out in a cold sweat, but Ba Da laughed it off, reminding her that she knew how to swim. At the beach, they watched the sunrise together. That embrace marked the definitive end of their friendship. Upon returning, Ba Da went straight to the law firm. A court summons was also delivered to Yoon Gang's house and signed for by her mother. Afterward, Ba Da pretended to be going abroad for studies, asking Cha Won to take her daughter to the airport. Yoon Gang cleaned the house, but as she was about to leave, she heard the sound of the door opening. She quickly hid in the bedroom. After Ba Da entered the house and saw that it had been cleaned, she went into the bedroom. Noticing the new bedsheets, she teased Yoon Gang. To Yoon Gang's shock, Ba Da suddenly hugged her while she was hiding in a closet. Ba Da then proceeded to sue her supposed friend, ignoring Yoon Gang's pleas. When Yoon Gang received a call from the police station regarding the investigation into Ba Da's stolen designs, she rushed over and feigned innocence. During questioning, Yoon Gang claimed she had only taken drafts that Ba Da had thrown in the trash, insisting she hadn't stolen anything. Yoon Gang stubbornly defended herself. However, when the police revealed they had evidence, she confessed to receiving 500,000 won after being threatened with exposure to Ba Da. She admitted to delivering the draft to Seo Jun. Upon hearing this, the police concluded that Yoon Gang was aware the stolen designs would be copied, but proceeded anyway, making her an accomplice. When Yoon Gang argued that they were friends, Ba Da denied it, stating that Yoon Gang was merely her assistant. Ba Da recounted all of Yoon Gang's wrongdoings and requested the police to prosecute her. Yoon Gang desperately tried to salvage the situation, explaining that she only took the 500,000 won because her mother needed urgent surgery. She pleaded that she was coerced, but Ba Da remained unmoved. Coldly, she said, "Don't even think about Cha Won anymore." After returning home, Yoon Gang's mother handed her some documents. Inside was the lawsuit Ba Da had filed against her. Clutching the papers, Yoon Gang went to Ba Da's office. Ba Da reveled in Yoon Gang's panicked state. She reiterated Yoon Gang's offenses and declared that their friendship had ended during their trip. The compensation demanded was 3 million won. Ba Da knew Yoon Gang couldn't possibly afford it. It was meant as a final, crushing blow. Looking at Yoon Gang's distraught face, Ba Da sneered, "I've never seen anyone as disgusting as you." Prior to this, Yoon Gang's family had been strategically placed within the company, as well as Mr. Park's household, to work essentially as parasites. Now, despite Yoon Gang's attempts to explain her actions as stemming from financial desperation, and despite her pathetic displays, Ba Da remained utterly unsympathetic. She intended to slowly crush Yoon Gang. Finally, she uttered, "See you in court." A few days later, Yoon San was researching on her computer when she discovered the lawsuit against her sister. Unable to hide it any longer, Yoon Gang burst into tears. Yoon San comforted her and then sought out Cha Won. After hearing about the lawsuit, Cha Won went to Yoon Gang's ex-boyfriend, the prosecutor. The prosecutor painted Yoon Gang as a manipulative and deceitful woman who lied without hesitation. He even described Yoon Gang's cramped and dilapidated home. Meanwhile, Yoon San called her sister and mentioned she had previously consulted a friend at a law firm. This friend advised against going to court and recommended settling the matter privately. That night, Yoon Gang ran to the riverbank, praying to the gods for success in becoming a teacher. She then rushed to Ba Da's office, claiming she had given all the information to the police, and that the truth would be revealed in 2 days. She declared she was there to discuss a private settlement. Ba Da admitted she sued Yoon Gang to ensure this stain would follow her for life, as that was the only way she would be satisfied. Yoon Gang knelt, willing to give up everything for Ba Da's forgiveness. She pleaded that if she went to jail, her entire family would be ruined. Yoon Gang promised to disappear forever if pardoned. However, Ba Da remained unmoved by these words, indifferent to her shameless friend's desperate pleas. Unbeknownst to them, Cha Won had also arrived and witnessed the entire scene. The next day, he sought out Ba Da and personally prepared a feast. Ba Da initially thought her ex-husband had seen the light, but her anger flared when he asked her to drop the charges against Yoon Gang. The reason was that the video from the cafe had gone viral. Yoon Gang had been working like a dog for Ba Da, so Cha Won wanted her to withdraw the lawsuit. As Ba Da tried to leave, Cha Won stopped her, attempting to explain things on Yoon Gang's behalf, only fueling Ba Da's anger further. Early the following morning, Ba Da stormed into her father-in-law's house and demanded everyone follow her. They quickly arrived at Yoon Gang's home, where Mr. Park discovered that Yoon Gang's family were all his household staff. Yoon San and Nam Cheol, disregarding everything, ran to embrace each other. She knew he had left home and that his wife was about to leave for volunteer work abroad. Knowing he couldn't bring Yoon San happiness, Nam Cheol couldn't bring himself to ask her to stay. Not wanting him to see her heartbreak, Yoon San ran off without looking back. Nam Cheol immediately regretted it and chased after her, but it was too late. Just then, he received a call from his family informing him that Mr. Park had been scammed. He frantically searched for solutions, even leveraging connections with former classmates to find a lawyer friend, only to be humiliated. Meanwhile, inside the house, Yoon Gang continuously berated her parents and declared her intention to find her first love. At that moment, Mr. Park came out to confront her, just as a subordinate interrupted to speak with him. Nam Cheol had found the scammers. Having failed to get help, he'd staked out the scammers' location and successfully apprehended them, bringing them to the police station. Upon hearing the news, Mr. Park rushed over. Seeing the son-in-law he had once driven away now rescuing him, he was overcome with emotion. However, remained stubborn, waiting for Di-jun. Seeing this, Di-jun called her and definitively ended their relationship. A returned home distraught. Looking at the divorce papers her husband had left on the table, she sat in thought for a while before deciding to throw away all her short skirts. She explained everything to her 2 children, and then took them back to Nam Cheol's family home in the countryside. When Mr. Park saw Nam Cheol return, he was moved, remorseful, and embraced him tightly. The family let go of the past and began a happy life anew. Nam Cheol returned to the company and officially took over as chairman. A year quickly passed. Every time Nam Cheol came home, everyone lined up to greet him, filled with joy. One day, Nam Cheol's son fell off his bike after failing to brake in time. The person who got out of their car to help him was none other than his mother's first love. To make sure the boy was all right, he asked for his mother's phone number. Looking down at the familiar number, he froze. Rewinding back to the disastrous introduction, the ex-husband's family had gone to their close friend's house to fully expose their true faces. Upon entering, they discovered that Yoon Gang's mother was their former housekeeper, and her father was their driver. They had seen each other frequently, but after learning they were married, Mr. Park asked Ba Da, "Why did you bring them here?" Just then, Yoon Gang emerged from the restroom. Dion's secret was also revealed. While everyone was still in shock and disbelief, Yoon Gang grabbed breakfast and left. The 2 families were truly enemies in a narrow alley. Ba Da felt immensely satisfied witnessing this scene. After returning home, Cha Won's parents called him back and demanded he break up with Yoon Gang. However, Cha Won stubbornly stood by Yoon Gang. After leaving home, he rushed to confront Ba Da. He couldn't understand how she could be so cruel, pushing Yoon Gang to the brink in a single night. Ba Da immediately retorted that Yoon Gang had also caused her immense suffering. Cha Won expressed his disappointment in Ba Da and left. That night, Cha Won followed the directions to Yoon Gang's house. As he reached the door, remembering T-Gi's harsh words, he cautiously pushed it open. Once inside, he immediately declared himself as the one who promised to be with Yoon Gang for life. However, Yoon Gang was angered by his appearance. She immediately pulled him to the riverbank, demanding that he stay out of her affairs. She had lost everything, her reputation was ruined, and she was determined to end their relationship. She also apologized for making Cha Won's heart flutter. Cha Won refused to accept this, embracing her and declaring he would never leave her. Unexpectedly, Yoon Gang pushed him away, telling him to take back his pitiful sympathy, even though those words pained her deeply. But Cha Won wanted to run away with her. Hearing this, Yoon Gang burst into tears, reproaching him before running off. Early that morning, Ba Da's mother went to the school where Yoon Gang was about to start working. She hung a yellow banner to cause a scene. Returning home, she boasted of her achievement to Ba Da, saying she would deal with the homewrecker and prevent her from becoming a teacher. Ba Da thought about the miserable state of Yoon Gang's family that day. She also remembered her ex-husband's words and the things Yoon Gang had done for her in the past. Yoon Gang had helped her so much, even caring for her mother. Finally, Ba Da couldn't stand it anymore. She rushed to find Cha-won. From her ex-husband, Ba Da learned that Yoon Gang had wanted to end the relationship with Cha-won before she discovered everything. By this time, Yoon Gang had changed into a neat outfit, preparing for her first day of teaching. Ba Da ran from Cha-gun's house to the school to take down the banner. However, her mother also appeared and stopped her. As the two struggled, Yoon Gang arrived. She quickly hid and overheard Ba Da defending her to her mother. Ba Da, at this point, felt immense guilt over her vengeful actions. Hearing this, Yoon Gang couldn't hold back her tears. That morning, Yoon Gang stood at the podium, fulfilling her lifelong dream, and taught her first class. After the class ended, she submitted her resignation and went to find Ba Da. Yoon Gang wanted her friend to see her in her professional attire for the first time. Later, they met at a cafe. There, Yoon Gang confessed all her mistakes without making excuses. She also told Ba Da that she had resigned. Ba Da felt deeply sorry because it was the teaching job Yoon Gang had worked her whole life to achieve. Ba Da herself had spent a considerable amount of time withdrawing the lawsuit. Ba Da felt immense remorse for her actions. She couldn't imagine how difficult things were for Yoon Gang's family. Finally, the two reconciled. Afterward, Yoon Gang left for a faraway place, leaving a letter for her family. A year later, Yoon Gang became a teacher in a remote area. She also gave her address to her sister. Upon hearing the news, Yoon Sen rushed to visit her and prepared a special gift. When Yoon Gang turned around, she saw Cha-gun, who was volunteering to transport supplies to the area.